Hello, Heiner.
Amen.
How goes? Did you join the session yesterday? I was not there.
I was there in half an hour, and also this time I only stay for the first half hour.
Well, it's already been 13 minutes, as far as I can tell.
Yes, that's life.
Yeah.
We call the World Wide Web the World Wide Wait. So also
that was 20 years ago.
That's a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
And my block is really 15 minutes, quarters of an hour, and not hangling around with people forever. So I joined yesterday. Some people were not there. We normally expect. Others didn't join for a long time, came up and forgot all their civility and talked again as if they never learned anything since kindergarten. So I was a little bit pissed off. It is maybe, especially in males, a deep-rooted thing to make a one on many immediately take over and talk and talk and talk. And I'm really tired of that. That's why we were in an exchange with Doug to discuss today where we are blocked. And I said, I'm blocked by my indecisiveness to decide if I leave the whole GCC business or continue.
So where was that interaction with Doug taking place?
Email.
In email. But how is your landlord? How is your situation?
I'm asking for an extension. My lender says the approval is there. I just need to provide 2 documents, which one of which I have not been able to locate, but we're recovering from the government. And then we're asking the lender for an extension so that we can actually get this done. I don't know whether they're going to approve it or whether they're going to approve it with a price increase. I have no idea what's going on right now, but I'm just trying to do what I can do.
You're in limbo. You're in limbo.
Yes. So right now I have not yet gone anywhere, but my status is possibly changing on any given day.
Okay.
Did you pay another month's rent for this month?
I did. Yes.
So he can't kick you out until the end of the month.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Which should be enough time to get all your paperwork in order, I hope.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, if things go well, it should be done within a week, but that's what I thought a week ago.
Otherwise, you're fine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my daughter just came back from California on Tuesday, so we've had a good time. We were able to play ping pong again. We went out to dinner last night at one of her favorite places. And then the heat wave is over. It got to 103, which is like 38 degrees Celsius.
I'm aware.
So that broke on Tuesday. So we've been quite comfortable ever since then. Barry, you're about to say something?
Last Tuesday and Wednesday, Boston tied the record for the highest temperature. Yesterday, it tied the record for the coldest July 3rd of the year. We went from record high to record cold in 4 days.
Yes.
Nice. Nice. There's going to be more of that.
Yeah.
The equilibrium has been tweaked, you know. Now we're going to have to find a different equilibrium.
The distribution, the sigma, the variance is widening.
Yep.
And not only is the variance widening, but the swings, the pendulum is swinging all the way from one end of the distribution to the other in 4 days.
Yep. Yeah, the temperature is getting more agile.
And it's not only thing or the spectrum, it's also the speed. We always talk about epochal change and rapid change. And this rapid change is the most dangerous, and it has to do with our mathematical or climate model. that we still have not really many dimensional models, and it's probably not possible to even model. So all the jet streams, the atmosphere, is not really possible to match in these weather and climate models. But I have to make a confessional, primarily to Barry. I converted to water. I was just out in the beer garden and discussing there with Barry. I think he's on the phone now.
I'm off. That was my brother, but I told him that I was in a Zoom call, so he'll call me back.
So you see, I converted
to water from
yes.
beer. Yeah,
Yes.
Heiner had a lot of beer and he wasn't making a lot of sense. He was writing in 3 languages together and I couldn't decode his writing.
No, I did make a lot of sense, but you don't know me. And you see, I'm not a teacher, so I don't always say what is proper German and where is the proverb and did you add the nominative or
Well,
any?
It was worse than that because I didn't have the context.
Oh,
I had like one sentence and I go, what the hell's the context? What is this in reference to?
yeah. So this can drive people crazy when you, like a teacher, want to understand and not fear.
So it's okay. If it was a regular thing, I would be very concerned.
Huh.
Yeah.
Strange.
So anyway, so when my brother called me, I missed about 2 or 3 minutes of what Heiner was saying.
I'm bullshitting anyway all the time. Yeah. And that was our topic. I'm very much in irony, or I'm so frustrated, then I speak, how do you say, idiomatically or ironically, and that is very hard to get in the internet. And that is what I think is a problem in our conversations. In the animal kingdoms, they have a very strong smell. So the one animal knows immediately from that smell, better stay away. But in internet, we are all together in such lousy Zoom rooms.
Yeah. Did you go back and look at any of yesterday's recording yet, Sam?
No.
Don't bother. There was maybe 10 minutes of content that might be worth paying attention to, and more than 2 hours of just gibberish and nonsense and repeat and whatnot.
When I looked in, it looked like Glenn had been there, Kayla had been there, you had been there. I didn't catch much else because I was otherwise occupied.
Well, the main thing is that Jazz came back from his hiatus.
Ah.
And he picked up exactly where he left off, whatever it was, 4 months ago, and was complaining about the same stuff that was on the agenda 4 months ago. And we had to sit there and listen to him. He was actually pretty angry. So we sat there kind of here, rolling our eyes as he was complaining about the crap that was going on when he went on hiatus 4 months ago. You're looking like you didn't follow what I just said.
No, I understand what you just said. I'm just wondering how Jaswinder would have been keeping up with what's going on. Had he been watching all the videos?
I doubt it. No evidence that he was aware of any progress in 4 months.
On the other hand, you sometimes do that as well, Barry. You do say.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So how is it different?
Well, usually I'm much more succinct.
Okay, I'll give you that. If indeed he wasn't, but I don't know.
He wasn't. He was very long-winded. Oh, Joshua was there too with the baby and his wife. He had the baby on camera for like 2 minutes.
Nice.
But most people were gone after the 2-hour mark. And when everybody was gone, except Sam, you were on, frozen. And Jazz wanted to keep on talking. I said, I'm going to go have lunch. You can do a monologue if you want. And I gave him the host says, go ahead and do a monologue. I'm gonna go have lunch. And I think he talked for a few more minutes than
That might be interesting to check the last few minutes then.
yeah, I don't know what he said because I went down to eat lunch. So
Well, you know, as is my habit, I will post it.
Yeah.
So let's see if anybody wants to
Yeah.
see it.
he was angry. Joshua picked up his anger, as did I, in just his demeanor. But he was ranting about, the way things had been before he went on hiatus.
Did he update us on himself and what happened for those 4 months?
No, not really.
So it's like he just got temporarily shifted 4 months.
Yeah.
Huh.
Hey,
Okay.
can you read my T-shirt?
It's in German.
Schwer erziehbar. I know what schwer means, but what does erziehbar mean?
It says schwer erziehbar, hard to educate, and we are not learning. We
Yeah.
are opposing, and that was really my fed up situation when I left yesterday early, because it was again this month or one person or the other person or that person, and no conduct, no civility, no protocol or whatever you call it. And sometimes they get angry, they get emotional, some get, how do you say, imposing on others or complaining at others. But when people like Barry raise his voice and say, please shut up, I cannot listen to you anymore, you're always saying the same and you're not learning, and I cannot leave the class, then the clash happens. And that is my real deep issue I wanted to discuss today in the Sunday session. How can we come to what you always ask for? Protocol, way, behavior, and going to content, and not talking all the time of what a certain people feels or what he observes or what he expects. I think first we should give every newcomer a patron, someone who is guiding him and advising him, because we are here on public record, and then make sure nobody speaks about his opinions and assumptions and expectations, but contributes to the workload. Like,
You're breaking up, Heiner.
Yeah, Heiner, your audio is not coming through right now.
Could be worse. Better?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you put your phone down instead of holding it?
Well, I'm leaving anyway in 5 minutes, and I'm still enjoying the garden, and I have 2 tough meetings in the next hours. So I don't want to leave the garden, but I can share it with you. Why not?
Yeah.
We have even some birds singing here.
Oh, I thought you meant Biergarten.
Oh, I was. I just went home for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's his backyard.
Nice. Very nice.
And we have a little tent on the terrace.
Hey, out of curiosity, Heiner, totally different topic. Have you gone to the Netherlands to see Harry and Tammy recently, or have they been in contact? Because I've not seen much.
No, I want to see their rooftop. I think it sounds like to be, how do you say, a top terrace or whatever you call it, a very nice place on a high building. And it's in the right place of the town. I know Enschede. And so I was today the first time out in the beer garden in my neighborhood. And I'm not really traveling at the moment, still needing my shot, but I have so much things to do. So I'm not really into traveling out. And if I have to go in the next week to Madrid and Luxembourg.
That's strange because I thought that most people who wanted the vaccine could get the vaccine. Maybe that's just in the US. But have you been scheduled for vaccines?
Well, Germany is a very ordered country, I must tell you. And so first it was a tight schedule for the elderly, but elderly is above 70. And I'm a few months below 70. And then suddenly they opened, and then there was a strong rush and lots of queuing, and I'm not ready for queuing.
Queuing?
And queuing, waiting in
Queuing.
line to get into such a station. In Germany, it works with private physicians, but I don't have a physician, and the physicians are totally overloaded. And the public centers have a lot of problems, what kind of vaccination they have. And Germany is much to be blamed because they, not all the other Western civilized G7 countries, were just buying their injections, but following Mrs. Merkel, she said, no, we are not going onto the haggling market for vaccination. We do it in a joint deal with the European Commission. So everything was much delayed, and Germany is very, very delayed with vaccination. And I'm looking every now and then if there is a vacancy, but at the moment, especially if we don't have the electronic QR code registry and everybody wanted to go on holidays, it's really strange what's happening. Everybody looking for himself. I want to be vaccinated. I want to care for my eye on all levels of all chakras and all colors, but nobody cares about the we and the others. And I had so many deep fights. I mean, people kicking out others from advisory boards and foundations and whatever civil group. It is a nightmare how people behave, and especially our Western culture. It is the I culture. Just me. And after us, the deluge.
That's odd because I thought that Germany was efficient and well run. So I had that impression of German organization. You know?
No, you see, we are well run, but we have some decency. And when our Merkel says we don't go and pay double the price and leave the cohort of all other European countries, but we strike a European deal for all countries, then it takes time, but then it is a little bit less expensive. You in America, you have all the money in the world, you just put on the printing machine and have another trillion or whatever billion of monies. And we try with the head of the European Commission, which is a friend of Mrs. Merkel, Ursula, it's her name. And our Merkel is retiring now. She's fed up.
Yeah. I didn't realize you guys are still under restrictions. I thought you could freely move now. So I guess I'm wrong.
Well, we have the mask, and I was first time in the garden restaurant of a friend of mine, 200 meters from here, in the green, all beautiful. But shopping and entry and being in closed shops and whatever environments is difficult. And if you see now the soccer championships, how they are with 60 or 100,000 people watching a soccer game, it's a nightmare. I mean, that's real Trump meetings 1.5 years ago, making their campaigns and not caring that Delta is quite different from Alpha.
Wow.
Yeah, more virulent. And it's upsetting the reopening of stuff in the US because like they were going to open the local community centers and now the Delta is sort of, the Lulu in the story, and the groups that normally meet there want to decide, do we really want to restart with Delta in the air?
Yeah. Yesterday I went to Costco, and even though I've had both my vaccines now for over 2 months, Costco was as packed as I've ever seen it, even pre-COVID. And I wore my mask.
You did.
And I think I may have seen less than 10 other people wear their masks. Everybody else was maskless. And I still believe there's probably at least 20, 25% of them who have not been vaccinated.
Yeah.
Probably because they chose not to.
Yeah.
No.
Same at Home Depot. Nobody was wearing their mask except some employees.
Well, wearing a mask means to try to protect others and to do it together, like a collective effort.
Yeah.
But all this is to be put into the head of normal people in the street. I was working 6 years with such a epidemiology guru from Vancouver in medicine with World Health Organization. So we discussed all these epidemic problems back and forth, but it didn't get into the heads of the decision makers. And now we overload people who are just afraid. They are cocooned in their little apartments, women with children, self-education, single mothers, I think we say in English, and that is getting to some psychotic and traumatic environments. And these psychodramas, we discussed a lot on negative body image. What is really happening in society in education with young people, and what are the root causes? What are you not telling? As we did a lot of dropout rates in school studies. Why do the young people drop out? They're not going to tell you. And the father is not there, and the mother tells them to shut up. These are the central issues. Are we alone? I cannot see it. I'm here on my mobile.
No, we have 5 people now.
Stacy and Kayla joined.
So you see, at least we have still some strong ladies with us. I feel so alone, and that was my topic today. I really wonder if I should leave GCC, not the world.
I don't understand this need to announce or discuss if somebody's leaving or coming. Don't come a week. If you feel like coming, come. I don't understand what that's about.
Maybe Barry can translate for me. I have to leave.
No, I understand. Okay, let me rephrase that. When I have to wonder if there's an agenda. Does a person want to be convinced to stay? What's going on inside of you as an individual?
Me? Are you talking about me? Asking
Yes,
me?
I'm talking about you or anybody that feels drawn to discuss their possibly leaving a place.
Okay. I think it is a wake-up call for the group and GCC in general. I'm highly frustrated, but I'm still hopeful. And sometimes just saying, oh, I'm angry, or I'm getting some temper tantrum, or whatever you're saying in English, some emotion is not enough. Sometimes you have to give a warning. And I had in some conversations with Doug and Barry, I think per email, some discussions on how to be productive and co-creative and come back maybe to earlier ideas that newbies to the group or people just coming in learn a little bit the protocol, how we want to listen and not jump from one monologue to the next, and not everybody just telling his ideas or assumptions or theories, but really being co-constructive and co-creative. No, it was just an idea because I said, we leave Barry alone. Maybe I should support that you sometimes should show some, how do you say, emotions, some
Passion.
passion, yes, compassion, passion. And I'm different. So I normally shut up. But as GCC is important for me, I really felt we should really work on a topic like barn raising and see what is missing. What kind of ingredients for peace and dialogues are there? And why are we not picking up? And why are we always reinventing the wheels? And when someone comes in, new or after a few months, starts in the old mold or hamster wheel again in this typical patterns of monologuing and immediately taking up on the group. And so the main concern in this email exchange was we have not proper moderation. There is no chairman or chairwoman who makes sure that some people get some guardrails.
Sam has
Let me just ask you a quick question, Heiner. Are you familiar with an experiment that Stacy has just proposed in the last 2 or 3 weeks? Do you know what that is?
I don't know which one you're talking about.
the reading group.
It's not the reading group, it's the review of sessions and transcripts to really verify how they captured an event so that that can be used as a foundation for co-creation. That's how I took it, Stacy. And you and I did a session.
Yes, we did. And to, you know, but I want to just say, I'm sorry that you didn't bring it forward, because the reason I had that session with you privately was in the hopes that if you found it valuable, you would take it to the next step. And that's where I see the collaborative part of GCC sometimes misses the mark.
That's why I don't know about it. You didn't make it public.
Wait a minute. I guess I'm hearing an expectation, okay, that I was supposed to take it public. And there's an interpretation that I have of that you bring something to me, I'm supposed to declare it meritorious.
No,
And that I'm
wait a minute.
supposed to publicize it.
No, but then when we were in barn raising, I did bring it up a couple of times, but I think it takes more than one person to want to push something forward.
Agreed.
So I am bringing it up, and I brought it up more than once, privately, publicly. And then it would be for you to bring it up and push it, and then see if.
And I've done it at least twice. And I'm doing it again
I didn't
today.
take it that way.
Yeah, I
I
asked about the one-on-one, because when Stacy mentioned the one-on-one, and I saw it listed, and I said to, I don't know who I said it to, are you guys going to make this public? And the answer was either no answer or not yet. I don't remember, but it did not go public.
This is really interesting, because if there are expectations, there are timeframes for expectations. Okay. And some of you may know I've been otherwise occupied with first chakra issues. Okay. So, I do recognize the value. I have mentioned it at least twice, if not 3 times already, in various different contexts. If the video's there, I fully intend for it to be shared, but I wanted to get your consent on it first, Stacy.
Can we look at it again first?
Maybe that
Actually, I
was a
don't think we
hang-up.
You
need
know
to.
what? I
you know?
think what we decided to do was put out pieces of the text to illustrate what we're talking about. I'm remembering that right now.
Okay.
And you're welcome to do that. I'm just saying that I'm indicating that there are moves to utilize the raw record in derivative works. And that's something I've been citing for at least almost 4 years now. And it's starting to happen, although it was happening in other forms previously, through maps, through presentations, through polls, through summaries, through focused conversations, etc. So I think there are things going on that the people who lean in and care can see. And the people who aren't discerning are hearing the quote unquote same conversations happening over and over and over. Now, if I've been saying something from 4 years ago, I am probably the one who's most sensitive to the fact that adoption takes time. Either that or I'm just completely unable to communicate, okay? But adoption does take time. And people in marketing and psychology knows it takes multiple impressions for people to even remember certain memes, certain phrases, certain words, okay? There's such a deluge, Heiner's word, of information in the web that for it to pop above the noise takes lots of impressions. So it's not been any lack of interest or lack of intention to, mention that. In fact, I've gone out of my way, I think, at least 2 or 3 times to say,
Yeah.
I
No,
really
I think what
respect
happened is
that.
you were busy.
Yeah, and I have
My hope was,
quite-
and the reason that we met before the Saturday barn raising is I said, let's get it ready. Let's do this exercise. And then we can present it at barn raising together and see who else wanted to do it. And I think what happened is you had so much, you were preoccupied with the house and it just, that's what I think happened. But we can do that at any time with
Yeah.
with any call.
Yep. And my other theme, if we actually put it someplace where we think we have group memory, then that could actually, disseminate much more readily. That's another thing that I would like to see evolve. So I do think there are things going on. I think I see them fitting together in a larger picture. And I've described that larger picture multiple times. So I don't feel so bad about this criticism that nothing's happening. If nothing is happening, then people don't really want to know. They're not asking,
You wait politely,
No,
not
just like
annoyingly.
Heiner asked, and I answered.
Yeah.
So I think that's what.
Sorry. No, let me jump in or muscle in. No, I feel a lot of things is happening, and even bad energies and bad motions help us learn, and we have to learn fast. And sometimes I'm a little bit more impatient, but the need to structure in a virtual conversation environment much more effectively and differently than in normal conversations and town hall meetings and fireside chats, this makes our stumblings very obvious. And so it's a good way to learn. So I didn't want to show frustration when I said I'm pissed off, but just said, and this is what I wrote in this email, there is such a great tendency that good people with good emotions, good intentions, stay on even when many people have left.
Yeah, I had raised the topic of whether there were any exit interviews, because when I joined in October already, people had mentioned so many people had left. And I asked, were there any exit interviews? And the answer was no, there weren't, at least not any that were revealed. And somebody said to me on the GCC page, why are you still posting? And I say, I'm contributing my exit interview because nobody asked me for one. So I'm just posting my exit interview.
I find this all rather interesting, and I'd probably be provocative if I use the word amusing, but I might.
I mean, you got fed up with Facebook, as a lot of us have got fed up with Facebook. But GCC isn't just the Facebook page; it's also the Zoom and also the Zulip. So I'm like a lot of people fed up with Facebook, but I haven't left Facebook because I got a lot of contacts on it. I think I'm more fed up with GCC than Facebook in general, simply because the time spent is not commensurate with the gain. I think there's a lot of time spent and not as much gain as I would like to have acquired or contributed in terms of the amount of time. Go ahead, Sam.
I think it's indicative of how difficult this thing called collaboration really is. We
Yeah.
think it's easy.
It isn't.
It's not easy.
No.
And if we don't figure it out, we will be a laughing stock. And I've said that before. And if we let little things like timing, like expectations, like differences of communication, like lack of memory, like not even be able to sync up at the same time of day or week, or forgetting that I wrote it down this way and you wrote it down that way, little things, all these little things add up. And any single one of them can derail a collaboration.
Yeah.
And if we don't see those, and if we don't focus in on how we can resolve these things and do it together, because each of us, I swear to you, each of us has the goddamn solution to all of those problems, because we've known it. You've got yours, I've got mine, Stacy's got hers, Kayla's got hers, Colin's got his. The problem is we don't have them together, and we don't have them as a group. And I know people flinch when we say we and group, okay? So we may, from time to time, get pairwise, like one-on-one collaboration, but for it to scale, we got to get over a lot of these problems. And they sound small, but they each derail. That's the difficulty that I think is not really appreciated among quote unquote collaborators. See, if you write up a charter, I can say, yes, I'm there, I'll do it, okay? If I write up a charter, people are free to say yes or no. But to co-create a charter, yeah, we've not been able to do that, right? Because it means taking your ideas and my ideas and, figuring out how to put them together so that the outcome is something that's better or at least agreed upon. And how do we do that if we don't even attempt it? There have been attempts, but those are rare and not well recognized. And worse, not even well communicated to the group. So each one of those is a derailing factor. And I do, by the way, feel that frustration. I try not to express it as much sometimes, but I'm still leaning in and trying to create some solutions to it. So I've tried various different things. Maybe each of you has tried different things. I see Stacy still trying. I see Colin still trying. I see you still trying. But I see a lot of other people just come in and say, oh, it's just the same conversation over and over again, and express their frustration rather than attempting to co-create. So that lack of interest in co-creation generates a frustration in me, which I'm still trying to control. But yeah, I could easily have multiple outbursts on this.
You can just mention it. Say, I'm frustrated.
I just did.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Just say it. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm exasperated. You can just say it in plain words.
I'm not going to use those strong words yet. I'm going to reserve my level 11, 12, 13, 14 for when I really want to use it. Okay?
I'm waiting with bated breath.
You don't want to wait. You don't want to be there when it happens.
You got
okay?
up to 8 or 9 a couple of weeks ago, which I thought was pretty damn good. You managed to keep it below 10, just a notch or two below 10. It was fabulous.
Was that between you and me?
We were all here. This is, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago. Everybody was here. And you were lacing into me at, say, about a audio level, maybe 8 or 9, nominally. I thought it was a very good, well-modulated rant. Okay.
Okay.
I just have a question. And I wish Heiner was here because I would ask him. I want to know specifically, what are your expectations for this meeting in general? You know,
Sunday? You mean Sunday?
well, this is Sunday now, but for what are the expectations when we come to barn raising? Because I'm thinking right now, I feel like it's barn raising more than unblocking.
Okay. That's up to Sam to answer, I think.
Well, I mean, we all probably have a little bit of different expectations. I wanted to hear what Heiner was going to say, because he was the one that was most frustrated that it wasn't what he wanted. And I was, what exactly does he want?
Progress.
But what does progress mean to him?
Solving the key problems that face our culture in the 21st century.
Okay, so what I want to say, and I'm going to share something in a minute, I was hesitant about it, but progress, if we can figure out how 5 or 6 of us can get along and really care about lifting each other up and, you know, helping each other to come alive, then I don't see how there is any progress. But I want to share something. So Barry, I don't think you'll mind because you're all about what's in the text, but I want to read something that you wrote 2 years ago. It was on a public thing. We were having a dialogue. This is 2 years ago. So hopefully you're going to say, well, I don't feel that way anymore. You said, based on yesterday's conversation, I would be more likely to anticipate that Stacy will not be forthcoming and that I will be unlikely to learn anything useful to either of us.
What was the context?
It was a post about, I don't even remember what the context was, but I was questioning you. I don't remember. It was 2 years ago. I could probably find it, but I do remember that another person, first name of David, explained to you how my mind works differently than yours. And what's it here? The important point I'm trying to make is right now, after 2 years, there's something, and I'm going to speak for me, but I'm assuming it goes for you too, that we actually care enough to figure out where the other person's coming from. And we're not coming from a place of this person's just trying to mess with my mind. And that comes from direct connection and getting to know each other. And to me, that's what's been important about GCC.
Yeah.
That's just for me.
Yeah. There's a missing prepositional phrase. Stacy is not going to be forthcoming about prepositional phrase. That's what's missing. That's the context. Because you can be forthcoming on some things and not on others. And I need to know the context to be
well,
able to.
my answer to you was, and I don't have the whole thing because it's just a screenshot, but my answer might give some context. I said, Barry, you are correct. I hadn't adopted your self-disclosure. That was my own judgment call, though. It wasn't that I did not understand, and then I can't see the rest of what I wrote. But the point is, my sense is that I wasn't telling you what was going on inside for me as you were trying to discuss certain things.
This is 2 years ago.
I'll find it. I'll be able to
find it because self-disclosure about, say, a person's backstory, that's the most common thing that people are hesitant to disclose. Elements of their backstory that are emotionally sensitive. And I think I'm a little bit more open than most people about disclosing my personal backstory. But a lot of people just don't want you to know where they're coming from. You say, where are you coming from? You know, that phrase. And sometimes people will say, well, way back, I had this, this traumatic experience, and that's where I'm coming out of this trauma. But a lot of people will not say, oh, well, I had this really bad experience 7 years ago or 10 years ago. They won't be forthcoming. And that's probably something like that. I have stuff in my backstory that I haven't said very much about. Of course, it goes back 35 or 40 years, so it's practically.
But the bigger point I wanted to make is at that time, and this is 2 years ago, I think that you were assigning not positive intentions to me.
Oh, that could be. Although it's really hard for me to divine intentions. I don't trust my own ability to guess at intentions and emotional states unless they're expressly disclosed. I know that I suck at that.
Right. And that's exactly what this situation was about, because I know from reading the rest of the comments and what I wound up saying after, that's exactly what it was. And that's the benefit of knowing each other better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, people don't disclose sensitive elements of their backstory unless they're very, very trusting. And you don't trust somebody you barely know. It's just routine. I don't have a problem. If I've already published a piece of my backstory on my blog, that's on the open internet. So it's not a secret. And I don't mind if somebody asks me a question, have you ever been diagnosed by a psychologist? Yeah, it's up on my blog. Here's the page of DSM-3. Here's the name of the number of the diagnosis. And here's the paragraph that I wrote about it. You can go read it. You don't have to guess at it. But, that's already public. If anybody says, have you ever been diagnosed? Yes, I've been diagnosed. It was in 1985, and here it is. There it is. I'm telling you in plain English. Full disclosure. So other people are going to say, have you ever been diagnosed? Well, most people are not going to tell you that.
This was a conversation more about, I believe the soul was involved, and, it wasn't anything where there were definitive answers.
Oh.
It was,
Yeah, if you find the
but
context,
just tell me you don't feel like that anymore. That's all I want to hear, and I'll be happy.
I need to know the prepositional phrase about the context.
Barry.
Yeah.
I think I've heard you say, listen for the need.
Yeah.
Listen for the emotion.
Yeah.
And what was the third?
Request.
Right. So what did you hear from Stacy?
She wants to know if I've changed my mind about something I said in some undisclosed context, unrecalled context 2 years ago. And I can't tell her that I've changed my mind because I don't know what the undisclosed context is.
Go deeper, Barry. Why would I want to know that? Go deeper.
Yeah. What's the need?
Give me about 30 minutes. I might be able to come up with the hypothesis as your need, unless you
No, you don't need that long, Barry.
I don't need that long. All right, 27 minutes.
No, just what's in your gut right now. Don't overthink it. Just answer.
I don't know.
Did you hear a request?
Yeah,
It was a very specific request.
The request is, have I changed my, can you tell me that can I tell Stacy that I've changed my mind about what I said to her 2 years ago?
Yeah. And can you?
Why is it different? I can, but I don't know what it's about.
Okay, so maybe.
So I don't know if it's true that I've changed my mind.
So the question is, do you feel that we can learn from each other?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Then you've changed your mind. And that's what, I mean, it wasn't a need. I was using this as an example.
Yeah.
But maybe deep down this much, it's definitely nice to have that need filled.
Yeah, I've always felt that everybody can learn from everybody else. Now, some people are really hard to learn from, maybe nigh impossible, and some people are easy and fun to learn from. Part of learning is the learning process fun? And one of my ideas is that if it's not fun, people don't want to do it. So
Yes.
how do you make the learning process fun? That's been a big challenge for me. Go ahead, Sam.
This smacks to me a little bit like Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Okay. We were talking about a specific case, and now there's a generalization coming from you. That's what it felt like to me.
I thought
didn't feel
Stacy
that.
wanted to know if I changed my mind about that particular item, as opposed to, can I learn from her? In general, yes. In every individual case, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Can we add that context?
She doesn't remember it. She has to go back and dig up the research.
The important part of the context, it was before he knew me as well as he knows me now. It was 2 years ago. Go ahead, Sam.
Wait, but I think it's an interesting question from Colin, because if you actually share that screenshot with Colin, he can use the exact wording and search to find that exact moment.
But
So
it's not a
here's the
GCC.
thing.
It's
Now
not a
I'll be-
GCC. Is it?
No, it's not
It's
in
not a
GCC.
GCC. You can't
Oh, okay,
search.
all right.
You can't search all of Facebook or
All right.
No.
whatever.
I know I can find it. There's no doubt about that. But here's the, now I'll be really revealing since this is supposed to be on. It's almost like I really don't want scrutiny on that. You know, like I'm not sure if I liked what I was saying then. I'm not sure,
There you go.
you know, that was 2 years ago.
But why not? I mean, it's wonderful that I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I wouldn't want to be the same idiot 2 years ago. I'm hoping I would have evolved more since then, you know?
No. It's not about the same. I'm the same person. It was more like, so this, oh God, this is really revealing now.
See, there you go.
Hey,
So this
it's
goes
consensual.
to,
You don't have to go there if you don't want to, okay?
I can do this. No, this goes more to an intellectual thing and where I might feel insecure. So to me, the conversation was on a higher level and I was trying to participate as much as I could. And at the time, I felt very sure of what I was saying, and maybe I still do. I didn't take enough time to really read it carefully, but it was really just, it had to do with the nature of the soul and just the existence of the world, you know, so. I know in one point I said, at one part I asked you, I said, well, then why do we all have individual fingerprints? So that's how I know kind of what the conversation was about. But
I don't recall this conversation as you're describing it. It's not enough detail for me to pinpoint.
I was very, very revealing in the conversation because I did want to teach something in revealing my own. So I'll tell you something else that I said. I explained, somebody else had said something that made me feel better. And I explained that having Dave make the statement that he made, I was now out of defensive mode and I was able to hear something differently. So it was very revealing on my part. God, now everybody's looking for it.
I'm just trying to think if I can figure out which David it was.
I can tell you who it is. I just don't like to use
Is
David
it
W.
David like Eagle something?
David W.
David W.
I will get it for you after the show.
Whitlock. Correct?
Yes.
David Whitlock actually lives down the street from me.
Does he?
I think so. Is he the guy with the NO, the nitrogen oxide, the spray stuff?
I don't know.
I think that's the same David who lives a few miles from here. Pretty sure it is.
Stacey, you
I
want me to
promise you I will get it. What?
do you want me to take you off the hot seat?
Yes.
Happy Independence Day, quote unquote. This is gnarly.
In what way?
I mean, I just shared a meme earlier this morning as this, picture from the 50s, father talking to son saying, hey, look at people celebrating the immigration to the United States, escaping a monarchy, but now essentially trying to keep immigration from happening. This is a paraphrase. It's a very badly paraphrased thing. So it's pointing at some of the apparent hypocrisy now of the quote unquote patriots who are there because we escaped the monarchy, who are now trying to essentially make immigration impossible, if not illegal, for others. And that is what we're here to symbolize today. So I find that one of these things that irks me. You know, I guess one of the things that irks me is hypocrisy. And
Yes.
and maybe I shouldn't get irked so much. Maybe I should just accept this part of human nature, you know, but it still does irk me.
Don't accept.
So it irks me too, but I'm so well aware that every one of us has that inside of us. And I guess that's where my focus is, on finding my own hypocrisy and creating safe places where we can recognize our own hypocrisies. To me, that's the starting point. Because if we're afraid to look at it because we're going to be like shot down for it, we're just going to go into denial and we'll never let it come to consciousness. Sam?
I love what you say, although I don't think it starts there, because people who are deep in their hypocrisy will not see it.
No, they won't.
So one cannot start by looking inside and say, oh, I'm a hypocrite. Usually doesn't happen that way. You know?
See, there's a way out of it, and that is, you say, I have a value or a goal or an objective which I am struggling to achieve. I'm not there yet. I'm promoting this goal, this objective, this value, and I'm in process of arriving there. So in the process of arriving there, I'm not there yet. So there are times when I fall short of this value or this goal or objective, but that doesn't make me a hypocrite. That just makes me a struggler. You know, we're all struggling to achieve whatever it is we're trying to achieve.
No, that's a very good distinction. And in fact, by the way, I strongly agree with you on that one, you know, especially if you actually try and consult two very close friends about that, but that's another matter, okay? But there's a difference between struggling to understand versus outright hypocrisy.
Yes, there's a big difference. Preaching something you do not practice, don't even try to practice, don't even know that you're departing from it. That's true hypocrisy. And it's easy to conflate not achieving your goal and saying, oh, you're just a hypocrite. See, that's a false accusation.
No, it's a beginning of a conversation.
It's the beginning of a nasty conversation.
But
You're
that's the
stigmatizing me.
That's the importance of questions, though.
Yes.
Because if we don't have a question that we actually have to think about, we may never recognize those things. I mean, we're at all different levels of how much we think and question ourselves. So you're right. There are some people that are never going to think about how they feel. They're deep in their own hypocrisy. Okay, maybe asking a question will get them to think, maybe it won't. But questions, regardless of what level we're at, and having the space to actually think about it, not just come up with an answer, that's the process.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, anybody, you go ahead. I'll stop.
No, I was holding up my finger saying, thumb
I
up
like
on that one.
I like to quit when I'm ahead.
I mean, if you have a coach who's trying to help you achieve a goal, the coach is not going to say you didn't achieve the goal. The coach is going to say, here is an item of behavior where you fell short that you can fix. This is at your frontier where you stepped this way and it would have been better to step that way. That would have been an incremental improvement. And a coach or a mentor will point out a specific place where you fell short, where you can, the next time, do it better. But if they say, well, you know, you're a hypocrite, you're nowhere near you're not a chess master yet. Well, yeah, I'm just a novice. Okay, I know that.
But first you have to know what the person is trying to achieve.
Right. You have to know their goals, their intentions, their values. And I think it's really important for people to come into a group and say, here are my personal values. Here's my understanding of the group's collective values. And here's the alignment between my values and the group's values. And if I have a personal value which is at odds with the group value, then I'm not going to be motivated to pursue a group value which is at odds with my own. And you need to know that. I need to tell, I told the story, when I joined MITRE, I say, I'm here to do life-affirming applications of technology, meaning I'm not here to help you do death-dealing applications, even though I know that you're doing some of that. And don't ask me to do death-dealing, only ask me to do life-affirming, and then I can help you. Otherwise, I have to leave the organization. And in fact, that's what happened after 3 years. There wasn't enough life-affirming stuff to do because the government was only funding the death dealing stuff, mainly. Go ahead, Sam.
So I'm going to tell a story about music, okay? I took violin lessons many years ago, okay? And when you're starting off in violin lessons, it is exactly as Barry describes, right? Your teacher has to show you how your hand position's incorrect, how your bow position's incorrect, how your finger pads, press the instrument, et cetera, right? So you go through 5-6 years of that, but around the 6-year mark, if you've been practicing a lot, okay, you get to this level where you don't actually need a teacher all the time because you've gotten to the level where you can actually listen to yourself so well and understand what is trying to be achieved that you can yourself understand, geez, my fourth finger was not extended enough, or geez, my bow was too close to the bridge, or what was going on, okay? But you can't do that when you first start. You don't have the awareness. You don't have the ability to listen that well. You don't have the understanding of the mechanics that well. You don't have any of that until you attain certain level of, I guess I'll use the word mastery, although it may not actually be a master level, but you got to attain a certain level of skill and attunement to what's going on before you can start doing this on your own. We don't understand that about most of other human behavior. We think, oh, just because I learned English in 3rd grade, now I can talk and I can talk to anyone. No, there's a lot of skills that you attain between 3rd grade and 30 or 35 or 70. And a lot of that would be accelerated if one had coaches and teachers. But a lot of that is just attempted on your own. And you don't really know what to listen for, what to actually seek out, what your skill set might want to be as opposed to where it is today. It's not explicit. So people come to quote unquote communication and or collaboration thinking, all right, let's just do it. What's the matter? Must be you, must be, this, must be that. That must be the problem. Instead of looking at, hey, how am I prepared to deal with it? Or to make it happen, or to make it more likely to happen? I would guess very few people ask that question. And yet, there's such a dearth of really good skilled collaborators, because if we had them, there'd be a lot more collaboration going on. Now, there is a lot of collaboration going on elsewhere in the classical model, where somebody pays me, I pay them. Yeah, we know how to make that work. I'm talking about the different model, where we're autonomous and we're trying to align and we're trying not to work at cross purposes. That's the area I'm leaning into. And just getting people to recognize that there's an extensive skill set, even that's not an easy message. Because the implication is, oh, am I here? Am I here? Am I here? They don't want to know that, hey, there's a possibility I might be down here. Yeah. I don't want to know that there's a possibility. Actually, that's not quite true. I do want to know that I might be down here, because that means, wow, there's all this much I could learn. That would be exciting. Over.
Oh, Colin joined twice. That's why it changed. Okay.
Colin's hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. Do I have the chipmunk voice or do I have the right setting?
You're good.
It's the right setting.
Good. So you can.
Yeah, the grandpa voice.
The other one might be better because Stacy says it's hard to be upset at a voice like be upset at a voice like that. It's just so that's a soft.
Just don't say anything to upset us. You can use any voice.
That is a challenge, and I think would be a joy if we could say what we need to say without upsetting anybody. I just wanted to mention, been watching a little Marshall Rosenberg, is that his name? Martin?
Yes.
Or Marshall?
Marshall.
Yeah, and he says really all people ever say is please and thank you, right? That's all anybody's ever trying to say. So
Also,
that's kind of what Sam was saying. If we could just figure out the way to ask. And Stacy, we all say that, right? So if we could think in terms of just please and thank you, it's almost like Stacy's idea of the yes and no maybe game. You know, can we just give an answer and then give the long thing instead of giving the long thing? I know sometimes when I'm talking to certain people and they tell me a story, I would like if they started with nobody was hurt, but because they get into the story, and as the story's going on, it's like, oh geez, was anybody, you know? So just start with, okay, nobody was hurt. Yes. Do you want to hear more? Like, I don't know. There seems to be a way of being conscious of how you're asking, and if you are asking, or if you're just trying to gain points of how smart you are, and you know, comment on everything. You know, certain forums, it is open for comment on other things. Other forums, you might just let a lot of stuff go. And I find that that's a big difference between barn raising and unblocking, knowing that. And I think, you know, Heiner was talking about having a known format. So I'm all about this known format, but not one that's static, but one that's dynamic, one that you can change. And, you know, this is all just common sense stuff. But if we could just back away and from the dust cloud and just say, you know, what am I really asking for and what do I need? And it'd be really even more curious if we could, without upsetting anybody, state what our speculations are about what we think other people's needs are without them taking offense, saying, oh, you don't know what I think. You don't have no right to say what I think, because that's the process of steel manning. So if I had the right microphone voice, I could get away with steel manning. If I got the wrong microphone voice, I can't do steel manning. Or I've also noticed that other people who have more, but Stephen Covey, emotional credits in the bank account, you know, how he had a bank account of goodwill. And so the goodwill that you build up with somebody gives you leeway. So, you know, you can really talk and criticize and show your mistakes and vulnerabilities when you have that trust. And so, you know, I tried to speak about a trust graph, and, you know, I could talk about all this stuff, but, you know, I do think we have pieces. And maybe Marshall Rosenberg would be a good example of just starting from there, like the nonviolent. What are you really asking for? Because is there really a need to be violent? Even if there's danger, can't we find a nonviolent way to express to everybody that, hey, you know, we got to up the buckets, the fire's getting bigger. Instead of screaming, you know, go faster, or whatever it is we need to communicate. Because I find this, the only justification we've had for violence is justifying danger. So I think if we're going to master the ask of what we want, the please and thank you, maybe we could also master how we can clearly express that we think there's danger without causing because, you know, I think Heiner's right about, you know, some conflict may help us, but does it have to derail us? Can't we take the collective intelligence and get the noise out of it by taking the violence out? I don't know. Sometimes there's just violence, and I don't want to get into protests, and, you know, I'm not into the violence part. And I know right now there's some stuff going on in Canada with the residential schools. It's crazy. So, you know, there's time for violence. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just trying to follow your meme trail, and I was beginning to hit my limit. So I just wanted to.
Yeah. No, I was
Okay.
free. What do you call that? Not free associating, but I was trying to write a novel, definitely.
Stream of consciousness. Yeah.
Stream
So-
of verbiage.
Yes. Okay. So let me go back to a point where I think you said Marshall Rosenberg wanted people to say, hey, it's just, you know, please and thank you. And that's what prompted me to write down there's two kinds of people in the world, because, you know, everybody's got a little insight. Marianne Williamson, in A Course in Miracles, says everybody's either expressing love or expressing a request for love. So that's another way of, you know, looking at it. Okay. And you could actually, you know, if you are that generous, map all these violent actions to requests for love. That's how she sees it. Okay.
Yeah.
Likewise, I could easily create another meme, say, hey, The world's got two kinds of people in it. People who want to do good or people who don't care about doing good. I could be that pokey about it, okay? I actually don't want to, because I'm just making a point that, hey, whatever insight you've got can split the world into two different factions. And, this is a very simple way of looking at things, but the world is very multidimensional. So you got to look at it in all these different dimensions. So the message still is, there's a danger to looking too simply and not to be thinking systemically.
I
These
agree.
little sorry, one more sentence, okay? These little memes that I sent around could, if you choose to do so, be easily dismissed as too trite. But that's also not leaning into where is it true. And I think if you were really, really trying to co-create, the dismissal would be harder for you to do. You'd be actually trying to say, where's the truth in this? How can I use this? Where's the truth in what I'm saying? How could it combine and co-create with that? That, I think, would be more generous. That would be more co-creative. Over.
Barry?
Yeah, I said before that I don't trust myself in interpreting unexpressed emotions, needs, and requests. And I wrote down in the chat, filling in the blanks, emotions, needs, and requests, and they're blanks. And I wrote it down because I don't even have a wild guess. I don't even have a first working hypothesis to plug in for that stream of verbiage. I was listening for emotions, needs, and requests, and I didn't come up with anything. Now, maybe that's my defect. Maybe that's my failure. So I'm going to ask Stacy, for example, could you fill in for me emotions, needs, and requests that I just couldn't get?
I mean, I think that, Colin, if it's okay, I think he just wanted to add to a conversation in the way that he felt connected to it, in a way that we could probably all agree with.
So what would be the 1 or 2 word emotion, needs, requests?
I don't think that was, I think that when you ask that question, it has to be a little bit more emotional. I mean, we can't walk around questioning everybody's, statement all the time in that framework, because most times, hopefully, we're in control of our emotions, and our emotions aren't getting us to behave in a different way. When we want to ask those questions, I think, is when somebody's acting out or causing a disruption, not necessarily just when we're having a conversation. That's just my thought. I don't know.
Sam, can you fill in the blanks for me, or is Stacy basically saying nothing
No.
to fill in?
No, because for me to fill in the blanks, I'd have to understand the model more deeply than I do. I actually have lots of models for how collaboration and communication happens, but I don't yet subscribe to the emotion, needs, and requests model. I could easily do so, but for me to do so, I would have to co-create a new one, bringing those facets in with the one that I've already got. Okay, that to me would be valuable, and I haven't quite done that yet. It'd be nice for me to actually study more about Rosenberg or talk to somebody who knows that well, but I don't yet understand it quite so well. On the other hand, in my own model, which I've taken classes on and read about, and I've mentioned Patterson's book, Crucial Conversations, quite a bit, okay? There's a different way of looking at what's going on there, okay? Or what's going on even here within the larger conversation. There's notions of, when is it safe? What is the pool of meaning? Do people really want to, listen and co-create a higher purpose? All of those are elements of crucial conversations models around communication and collaboration, which is just different questions. You can always ask different questions based on what you're seeing or what you're hearing. Those are the ones that Patterson recommends, okay? Because there's all the stuff that takes away from the pool of meaning, the triggers, the distractions, the violence, the signals, et cetera, okay? And then there's the stuff in the pool of meaning, which is stuff that you can actually reassemble in building blocks and co-create with, okay? And then there are differences of opinion where if you each are trying to elevate and say, okay, where is the other person really delivering value and making sense, and then try and co-create out of that, as opposed to just doing this with disagreement. There's the co-creation with disagreement, which I think is a much more, at least second or third grade level of communication, as opposed to kindergarten level conflict detection. So different models create different insights, which then create different actions, which then create different outcomes.
Okay. So you had the null model because you didn't
No.
have a model.
Did I just describe a null model? Did I just describe a null model?
No, you
It's
said
interesting that you would say that that's a null model.
no. Before he said, I don't have a model of emotions, needs, and requests.
I said that's not the one I use.
But you do have a model of it then.
I just described it. Did you not hear it?
I thought you were describing something else.
This is why it's difficult, Barry.
It is.
Try it
difficult.
again, Sam.
Huh?
Play it
I thought-
again,
I
Sam.
thought you could segue to something you didn't understand because you didn't have a model of emotions, needs, and requests.
I said I don't use that model, but I use a different model, and I would like to co-create a better one using both models. And then I went on to describe the model that I did have.
Okay,
Sam,
I need to read that because when it comes in oral, it goes past my ears faster than I can process it.
Sam, the model that you described that you do have is a model for, can you just give me 3 words?
Crucial conversations. And crucial
Okay.
conversations are described as things that have 3 states, okay? They're high emotions, high disagreement, and high stakes. If not all 3 are present, then it's not a crucial conversation. But you could use the same model for even non-crucial conversations.
Wait, stop. Is that true? I'm just, so it can only be a crucial conversation if it has those high elevations of emotions and whatever else you said?
High
Is that true?
emotions, high disagreement, and high stakes,
Okay, I got that part.
okay?
Okay, so I got the high stakes part. That makes sense to me.
Yep. Mm-mm.
What was the other one? High disagreement?
High disagreement, yes. In other words, people think they're far apart in their, understanding of what's going on.
Okay, so I got the high stakes, I got the high disagreement. So the
And then there's
key
high
is
emotion.
to,
The last one is high emotion.
okay, so so I think that the goal would be to get the high emotion, not even being part of the conversation to start with. But the nonviolent communication is called in when the high emotion is there. That's how I see
It's
it.
one way, yeah.
Not sure about that.
This may disturb you, but when you use the word crucial and the word stake
Mm-hmm,
together,
mm-hmm.
can you guess what comes to mind for me?
Jesus.
Yes, crucial is crucifix. Jesus on the stake. Jesus on the stake is the passion story. High emotion, high disagreement, high stakes. Nothing can be higher stakes in our culture than Jesus on the cross, crucifying on the stake.
I don't know about that.
For me, is that story, that image, that vision, because those 2 words are a direct reference to crucifixion on the stake.
It's interesting that you bring this up because I've talked about crucial conversations for over a decade, and you're the first person to bring that association up.
What do you think the word crucial means? Literally.
I understand what it means for you. I also understand what it means for most people. And most people do not make that association to the crucifixion.
Right, because most people don't read.
But it's really interesting if you think about
Stacy got
the
it.
Jews and the Christians and our history. I mean, there might be something there.
Passion, the stake.
Well, it's just 2 more kinds of people.
Yep.
Right?
There's 2 kinds of people.
No, but I'm
Those who
also
think biblically
thinking,
and those that don't.
but I'm also thinking in terms of governments trying to divide people. There's a lot of overlays between
Yes.
that time and this time.
Yes. Clearly,
I was going
because
to.
this is hard.
Go ahead, Sam. I was going to ring on that if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Up at the very beginning when I came in, I said, I feel the intentions that I have are a misalignment between certain people. So, and if I look at what Sam just said, if I tried to put it within that framework, okay, emotions are high, yes. And I think it's because of disagreement, misalignment of several things. And the stakes, well, that's interesting because the stakes could either be my stakes towards what I'm trying to bring and helping somebody else, supply me with materials or something to help me along my journey. Or, there's always a chance that I could give back. So you look for opportunities to offer. But are the stakes group actually more in the global challenges? And so that's one thing that has been difficult to compartmentalize, or has been compartmentalized for us. And we have to, in my mind, uncompartmentalize that between the different hosts bringing to our group what they think is the needed please and thank you in that instance. Now, Doug is all about the being, and I've had a difficult times being in my comfort zone around Doug, because Doug wants to go to the I land about me, and I want to go to the we land of the group and what I can do here, right? So I get back, well, unblocking is about trying to unblock things from us moving or me moving ahead to contribute to us. Like, it's kind of confusing how you actually look at the context map of why a person would be here. So is the stake, is what I'm talking about, is the stakes about global challenges? Is it about self-reflection? And do those things have to be mutually exclusive? And how do we navigate when we're going from one frame to another so that we don't feel like somebody is misleading us? So how do we become good at focusing and leading people through fairly complex contexts, as Sam was saying? So if we want to keep it play, that would be a good experiment if we could just, have a fun day together. But I'm not about that personally here, although I don't mind playing. Like, I did a puppet show, I think, one time with Lucy and Tammy and a bunch of them. That was, I don't know if that was with Fleming Funch or, but anyway, there's things that we can do here to build up morale, but to stay focused on what the stake is. So what's worth trading our time for and our thought and attention, and I do have some things that I think are worthwhile of my time that may not gel with this group 100%. So it would be best if I asked if it would be okay if I please made a little subsection where people could come and collaborate on that. No, I think that would be the right way to do it. I think I've tried that a few times, but I don't think there's enough awareness of this stake of why you might want to try to help and play with some. Is it just a waste of time, or are they actually trying to do something? And what is that something they're trying to do? Try to understand that. And so I early on, when I first came on the call, Sam said one of the bad things was not only that our asks of and showing of our way to fix or do what we're here to do, but badly communicated, even worse. So I'm trying not to badly communicate without. So I guess the best thing to do to help me is to say, okay, first of all, am I doing anything that's useful? And second of all, is there anybody that would be more interested in what's happening and how to make it work smoother? Right. So, those would be the things. analyzing me to know what I know about electrical engineering isn't the place to start with that game, in my mind. Although it's fun for chatter, it's not meant to be a prolonged. So however to frame that ask is something I need to learn how to do, so that I don't become too willing to allow somebody else to take my time while I listen, not getting what I want to communicate clearly. So how to communicate clearly before people waste my time and I waste their time. This is a big part of it, without being offensive. Right? That's the trick that Stacy was saying. Like, can you do it without offending somebody? Well, if we're going to have a discussion about souls, I'm out, like, right away. I got no use for that. I realized that biblical stuff has morals, but a lot of places have morals, and I don't look at any of them as an authority on anything. So, when somebody has assumed that they're going to use that as an authority, then I'm in a strange conversation all of a sudden. So how do I navigate that to ask that person, what is it that you would have in that story that I could actually use that, like, how can I listen to you without you putting me through a lecture about how sinful I am or whatever's coming down the pipes that I'm used to, so yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is an example where a person, you in this case, so let's say a conversation started that you wanted to be no part of for all the reasons you just said. You could still choose to be in collaboration by focusing on something else, like mapping it. You don't have to engage in the way that the other people in the group are engaging, and yet you can still be a part of it, and you don't have to try to change what's happening.
Yes, depending on what it means to be a part of it. I totally agree. In fact, that is what I do. I take myself out of it, but as soon as, if I don't agree with something, like a request for comments comes into Sam through the barn raising, collection door, and the request for comments is, we have a secular space. How are we going to deal with that? Because it's already there, right? Like, what does that mean? Has it been accepted? Like, have we got to the end of that discussion? I think it got shut down in unblocking, but I'm not done with that. I've written more about it on Zulip, and the difference between atheist and agnostic is important to me, because I see globally religion as a huge mind block on people, not their goodwill, but their entitlements and politics that they use with religion, not what they do personally with it in their sorrow and pain. That's none of my business. How
Actually, I think it's the opposite. I mean, what does it matter what a person believes if it's not affecting their behavior in a way that will affect you? So,
well, global conversation is the thing. Like, are we going to sit and have a global conversation about Zeus? No. Why? Okay, maybe we are. Maybe there's something valuable that the Greeks had from that legend, right? And then I say, well, if we do find a gem, can we take it and put it in the Humanist Manifesto, where it doesn't have that baggage of all that blood worship and whatever?
Sam has his hand up.
Hey, Colin. I'm going to give you an observation which may trigger both you and me, okay? And that is, I heard you say that you don't want to have a conversation where then all of a sudden you're being lectured by those theists with their framework of belief. But for me, what seems to happen more is anytime the topic gets even close to that, you end up lecturing the rest of us about not doing so. And it goes on for quite a while.
That could be. There's a way.
That's just one observation I'm making. Okay.
No, that's fine. I do in the global, I do see myself like the warrior with the shield and the sword when it comes to truth. And I've recently realized that truth doesn't matter if you don't have people's goodwill first. And a lot of people's goodwill is tied to the religions. So you can't just attack them and say, but at the same, like, for example, you can't say somebody is mentally ill because they're following something that is not based on evidence and they're believing it and making life decisions on it. Like, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. As you know, there's a lot of bad examples, and I don't find it a problem in this group, actually. I think the people in this group, for the most part, are not what I would call woo-woo. But I find it very hard to collaborate with somebody other than, I brought this example up, and I'll just say quickly, I got shut down in Unblocking, so feel free to shut me down if you feel that it's right. But there was a project that was brought here, and I tried to find a way to take that project and maybe build an application around it. So because I found it very valuable in its motivational qualities and its team building qualities. It was the alphabet code. Everybody loved to play it. And I just, I didn't think there was, anything about however the game came about and inspired to somebody is none of my business. And if they say I should play it because of that, that's not why I'm going to play the game, right? Still accept their offering, regardless if they say they got it from a deity or it was a download from the universe or whatever. Like, where do things come from? So that's fine. So I'm willing, and that person bringing this tool is not telling me I have to follow it. So I am leaning into that conversation. So it depends who and what they're bringing from the world of woo. And if it's complete woo-woo, you have to say, like Barry, there's a danger here. So how do we, I could scream at the top of my lungs, like, you can't prove there's a soul. Why are we talking about it? But, it's better to say, if you're going to bring up a soul, then let's have a good reason for it in the group. And then what I would say is, not only that, like the case we have right now is the story about the granddaughter and God, or who was it? A grandfather talking in the garden, and they refer to a deity. No, that's right. A girl was talking to God in the garden, and I say, why couldn't she be talking to her grandfather? That's my humanist version of it. So, both stories can stand. I'm not saying one's better than the other than in the context of global challenges, maybe the one with the grandfather is more appropriate than the one with, the Lord. Because I think the Lord brackets us into a context which is unnecessary. And I'm hoping that that's one of the ways that we can coexist, not by watering things down, but by bringing the mutual story of, the least valuable product. So we're not cluttering the space, not least value product. The, how do you say that? The most bang for the buck, basically, because context can go everywhere. And as soon as you bring religion into it, and even politics, you got to be careful. So how do we make it a fair conversation without being manipulated? And I don't really think we can. What we can do is we can say we trust people that aren't going to be hurting us, so they can ask questions badly and we can get around it and get to what it is we mean to say, other than people asking questions badly and we cut them down. I feel between me and Barry, if I asked a question badly, I'd be cut down instead of, he might say to, something else to Stacy or something different to me. Like, I think we have to back away from stereotyping each other and keep it secular, and secular in a sense where everybody's welcome, not that no religion is welcome, but bring the value of it. So what I'm trying to say is, if somebody's coming to lecture me, I'm not interested. But if somebody's coming to share a story with me and we can dissect the value out of it, and if it's important, then that's a really good thing. And I think humans are full of stories. In fact, that's what we are, right? So are we willing to listen to each other and help each other align? Or are we just going to cut each other down? And I think some religions come with an attitude of authority that pre-cut people off. And that's what I'm looking out for. I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with things, and, depending on who you talk to as well, educated theologians or country theologians. Two kinds of theologians, right?
So I think you put too much emphasis on religion. There are people that come here that will lecture, whether they're religious or not. That's just part of their style that they lecture. I'm sorry about the background noise. But I do hear what you're saying about being lectured to. The other thing that for me is more important than whether or not they're religious is, do they contradict themselves? Do they come saying they're for one thing, and then their behaviors or their opinions on certain other things seem to be in direct contradiction to how they presented themselves? And again, you seem to tie that all with religious. I don't, because I see that with all different, I see that among vegans. I see that among, every group.
Maybe we should
more
pick a
about
better example.
Personal style. What?
Maybe we could pick a better example. I'm just saying religion is the holy
Example you always pick.
entitlement.
But religion is the example that you always choose. So
Because it's the holy grail of authority over with no evidence.
it's not, unless that person is using it that way. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. There are so many people that you probably have no idea what their religious beliefs are, because they conduct themselves in a way that's not contradictory, in a way that's not hypocritical, and in a way that's not lecturing. So the fact that you attribute all of the negative qualities to somebody who's religious is just as biased as any other thing would be.
I guess it's a case-by-case basis, and it's not for me to decide, really, other than what I'm being told individually. And that's what happens at this group. I'm being told in a global context why I'm wrong, and it doesn't really happen here so much. So
Well, I just told you why I think you're wrong.
Yeah, no,
But
well,
Sam has his hand up.
in certain contexts, but I just want to make clear that if this is my example, that doesn't mean the example applies to everyone here, although I do believe that there's a little bit of that with Barry, with the crucifix. He's got a lot of religious knowledge. So I have to actually make exceptions, because I know Barry has goodwill. I'm willing to listen to Barry, what he has to say, because I don't think he's here to have power over me. But at the same time, Barry's an exception with somebody with that much, what I would call knowledge and motivation. And like, he's interesting to me that way. Anyway, Sam wants to talk. It's not about me deciding what other people should say here. It's about us deciding what we would like to take from the messages that people bring here, and how we can use and focus that without being derailed. Go ahead, Sam.
Jump in, Sam.
Okay,
Jump
I'm
in.
going to trigger everybody, including myself, okay, and say, I've heard this conversation before. May I change
Really?
the subject?
Yes, you may. You may.
Okay, I have come to the conclusion over the last several weeks that I may have had a less than optimal understanding / definition of emergence. To me, I think emergence does not happen out of group co-creation. I was thinking of this ideal where, well-meaning people come and co-create something, and all of a sudden, something exists. I am now shifting more towards the notion that co-creation happens still when one person with one small insight offers it to others, and then the others respond, and at that point then co-create. I was assuming a zero state from which we could co-create. I think there needs to be a seed, a little epsilon, brought by an individual that can then be the seed of co-creation. I think that ideal start from zero state has been holding me, and possibly by association, barn raising, back, because I was hoping to see co-creation happen in a more pure model, which I think can happen, but it just takes a lot longer. So I think the seed is an optimization, which doesn't necessarily detract very much from the co-creation, and in fact accelerates it. So I've just been coming with that little slight shift in what emergence means to me. And I just thought I'd just throw that in there, Because I'd heard that conversation before. Sorry. Okay, and now I know I've poked everybody. Okay, so give it to me.
Not poked.
Lay into me.
No, that was good. Like I just wrote down in one sentence what because Barry says I don't know what he's talking about, and that's fair. So I'm saying in the third person, Colin is talking about the parallels of religion in a global context as the example of bad collaboration and unfair conversations of the past. So for my project, when I run my better conversation tool, I'll run a religious person and an atheist person through the as data into the system. And if those people can talk and get something valuable out of there, including deciding not to discuss things because their worldviews are too far apart right now. So, you know, you can go as far as node 1 and you're done. No sense of going any farther. So I'm talking about religion as an example of data that could be put into a conversation tool. Okay. Like would the religious person get through the conversation without raising an alarm of some kind of over authority, out of bounds conduct?
Colin, I
Yeah.
think you're making such a big mistake doing that. And I have to say it because I can tell you there are certain religious people that are so much easier to talk to and so much more reasonable than certain atheists I've spoken to. So to just assume that atheists are easier to speak to because they're not religious,
No.
I think
No.
that's totally unfounded.
Sure, I take that. Clearly what I mean to say is that when somebody brings a claim of authority, there has to be a way to have a fair conversation with them without them telling you, you're a dirty sinner, go away.
Okay, can you stop for 1 second? Because the first part of what you said, I totally agree. When somebody makes a claim, and to me,
With
that
authority,
goes with authority, and I think that's a really
with no
important.
evidence.
All right, stop, please, because I want to collaborate with you on this point. Because up till that point, I agree. And where I think we should take it is when it's somebody of authority, how do we disagree with them? Because then there are power dynamics involved. And that's something that I think we should look at, because often, you know, most of us, you know, it's a scary thing to go against somebody who comes in with a certain amount of authority. That might be a teacher, a professor. It might be the person who signs your paychecks. That's something I think is worth speaking about.
Yep. That is the idea of being manipulated. I think we had a discussion a while ago with somebody presenting, it was Carl with the 6 hats. And he was frustrated. Remember that?
I missed that one.
And he was frustrated because he couldn't even get in past the first level of consciousness to the experiment, because it went off in what colors people are perceiving. And why did I bring that up? Because what happened at the very beginning is, I think it's Stacy asked the question, maybe it wasn't that one. I thought it was Stacy asked the question. Maybe it wasn't, maybe it was Sam. We can look back.
What's the question?
What are the things that you don't want to have in a collaboration, or what are the things that are, and my answer was, I remember my answer, I can't remember the question very well, but the answer was when you're being manipulated. So how do you know when you're being manipulated? Now, if you have a teacher, they may be manipulating you under consent, right? So, you know, they may be walking you down. Anyway, there's many tactics once you've signed up for a course that, you know, you're kind of like the Army has a way of dealing with people, teaching them things. Maybe, you know, some saying is when it's not justified, when you haven't asked for it. Like when somebody comes to this group, they have no authority to teach me. I've heard Heiner come here and say, I'm not here to be told. I don't know if he's meaning the same thing I'm meaning, but, you know, I don't mind discussing with somebody that we're going to have a discussion about something. But, you know, when I felt Heiner was trying to be my lecturer last week, I left. Because again, like Sam, I've heard it all before. So I agree with you, Stacy, 100%. And if you entered a conversation, you said, you know, we're going to have no interruptions. We're going to answer yes, no, maybe at the first, because it's a crucial conversation, right? So we've identified a crucial conversation. So we're going to put some crucial conversation tools around it. And we might even have an indicator board that shows what you know about the other person. And if you wanted to be full disclosure, you could show them what you think about them. Like, I think you're here to try to, like in a boxing match, it's pretty obvious. You're here to beat me, right? Or in negotiations, like, so different, collaboration, what is at stake here? And I think that's what I'm gravitating around. It's this, what's at stake part. And what I'm saying is, while we're collaborating, is it what's at stake, my project that I'm trying to build and my reputation? Or is it what I can bring to the global collaboration and just, work on my project on my own on the side and listen with ears where I might be able to line up and help the group somehow. I've already offered what I can. It's just, I think it wasn't very clear, and it wasn't, so maybe if somebody said, well, do you still think it's valuable? We could have that conversation. If nobody wants to have that conversation, then should I again hear Sam say, well, we've talked about this before? Like, I would rather have Sam say, can we talk about that again? Then, we've talked about that before. So I guess that's the way to get it going.
Can I go first, Barry? I'll be
Please.
quick. So collaboration is really important to me. And it's something I'm just going to put it. Have any of you seen the television show Chopped? It's a show where all the contestants, they get a number of ingredients. And the task is they have to use every single one of those ingredients. They can make whatever they want, but every one of those ingredients need to be included. As a collaborator, I come because I think that I'm hoping to find a way to take an ingredient from every single person. And a lot of people are like that. When you're in a classroom, you're a school teacher, you try to do that. You try to engage every student in one way or another. What I find is that a lot of people that come to these spaces, they're more focused on what they have to bring. And so it's not about how other things can fit with what they're doing. It's about, how do I get my thing to move along? And a lot of us recognize that the systems we operate under create this. Like, this is something that we learn under capitalism. So I see a lot of people trying to create something new, but they still haven't recognized where their own behavior is a result of how they've been socialized, how we've all been socialized, slightly different for everyone. I mean, you guys know me. I spend a lot of time watching my own behavior. I've seen how many times I've fallen into that trap. Maybe it's because, maybe I'll think twice. Do I want to share an idea? And then I have to go back. Well, what are the things that hold me back from doing that? Now, not everybody can focus on that, because then they wouldn't be able to focus on their other things. I think we have to find a way to look at who's in the immediate group, what the immediate situation is, and what we can build out of what is in our present moment. And with that, I'm complete. I hope that was clear.
That's a smart people problem.
Yes, it is. If you'll look at your list, I think I was one of the few that said that is what my interest is.
Yep.
And the way to deal with that, just to be real brief, it's how we group people. It's how we keep the social picture open for everybody, but we group people by what's needed in a particular project.
Barry.
Yeah, I want to double back to something about 5 or 10 minutes ago, because Colin brought up the point about making claims without evidence, or making hypotheses or theories without evidence. That if you're a scientist, you go out in the field away from the camp, you go out in the field and you study the world around you, you observe it. And so observation is a process that scientists do. They go out and they observe what's happening around them. And then they come back and they say to the camp, I went out and I observed something. Now, in the old days, the way a poet would write that is that so-and-so beheld something. To see something, the sort of poetic word is, I beheld. And the Greek word for I behold, is theoria, Theoria. It's identical to our modern word theory. To say I theorize literally used to mean I beheld, I observed. And the evidence for it is come with me and look for yourself. See the evidence for yourself. I saw the evidence, but don't take my word for it. I beheld it. Come and stand next to me and tell me, do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear? Do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear? Do you recognize those lyrics?
Do you see what I see?
Right. So observation is the source of evidence, but it's not one person observing and reporting. It's inviting everybody to come and see for themselves. Now, I want to go on to the next point here, which is about emergence. Because what emerges when you put people together are interaction between two or more people. Now, the most high energy example of that is called drama. If you have two people, call them the protagonist, the first person, and the antagonist, the second person, and they meet, what emerges from protagonist and antagonist is something that we call drama. And drama is interesting because people say, let me tell you a story. What is a story? It's a beholding of a drama, beholding of an encounter between two people who are at odds with each other. And so a lot of our culture is beholding drama, which is then reported as stories. And a lot of our culture is handed down through storytelling. And the best storytelling, the surviving storytelling, are the myths and the Bible stories and Gilgamesh. These creation stories and these culture stories are very popular because people love to sit around the campfire and tell stories. They're very entertaining. They're also very educational. And so when it comes to emergence, what comes to my mind is drama emerges. A lot of drama emerges because people disagree on what they have beheld. Go ahead, Stacy.
So imagine if the scientist is coming back, look at what I beheld, and they have a piece of a puzzle.
Yes.
And they put the puzzle down. Now imagine that the other people are able to look at the edges and say, wait a minute, I have a piece that could fit here. Somebody else says, I have a piece that could fit here. Part of what the exercise that I was doing with Sam regarding going back and looking at the texts, another application for that would be to have people go in and pull out the piece of the puzzle that they want to start from. If they were able to pull that piece out of the same, it's still coming out of the same one recording, so it's all a part of the whole. But that would be a beginning place. And if somebody had another piece that they said, oh, I want to add to that, that would help to self-organize within the bigger group where we could start building out. And hopefully at some point it connects.
Yeah.
So okay, thank you for letting me say that in a visual way, because I don't know that I could find the words to say it.
I love the jigsaw puzzle visual metaphor. The jigsaw puzzle metaphor is a fabulous visual metaphor. Here comes Kayla back.
I got her.
Let her.
I got it.
So, what was I going to say next? I didn't save my stack pointer.
We need people to not throw up the piece of the puzzle and say, I don't want to do this puzzle. I'm doing a different one.
So maybe it'll come back to me. But so what? Oh, I know what I want to say. So I want to go back to the word mapping, because I know that Colin likes the word mapping a lot, but I'm not sure where this term of art came from in the conversations of GCC, because I've also heard Sam use the word mapping. And one of the things I'd like to know is, did Sam bring up mapping first and Colin picked it up from Sam, or did Colin introduce the concept of mapping and Sam picked it up and joined him? Where did the word mapping come from in this conversation? And then in that context, I have a question. Do you connect the word, however you understand it, Sam and Colin, you connect the word mapping to my term of art, model-based reasoning? Now, I know that Sam talks about models because he just did. I connect mapping and modeling as essentially synonyms or very closely related words. And model-based reasoning is a very powerful. Do you want to answer that before I go on, Sam?
I could, if you want me to start from there.
Yeah, please do it, because I don't want you to have to stack it up on the on the back plate of the agenda.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to use mapping. And one way is for it to be used in modeling or model creation. Okay. They're not synonymous in my mind. Okay.
Yeah, they're not.
Because there's a lot of ways to map. You can map geographically, you can map chronologically, you can map topically, you can map by people, you can map by any number of dimensions. Okay. And then you can pick out of those elements that can construct a coherent model.
Yes.
More than one model. It's useful to create more than one model often. In fact, if you only have one model, you're likely to be just in tunnel vision. So yeah, I do think that it's important. And I've actually been using mapping ever since I encountered the brain way back in 2008. In fact, probably before that, because the whole notion in data structures of maps has been around for decades. And the idea that you have what's called a key and then a value is a map. So, where I am these days is anytime you have an association between a key or a term and something else, a reference or a value or any other kind of thing, okay, an object, a blob, that's a map. You can depict it chronologically, serially, pictorially, graphically, two-dimensionally, three-dimensionally, four-dimensionally. You can do it all number of ways. So yeah, it's a very general notion. It's been around for decades because mathematicians also think in terms of associations.
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo. This is where I first encountered the word mapping, because in mathematics, the word function is a very, very key word in mathematics. And a function is defined as a mapping from an input space to an output space. A function says, take any point in the input space and it will give you the corresponding point in the output space. So a function is a map. Literally, it's drawn as a map. And models, at least in science, are very often represented in terms of mathematical functions. And Sam used the word vision. Model-based reasoning, to me, is perhaps the most important and most powerful of all the very, very many methods of reasoning, from ordinary Aristotelian logic down to other kinds of methods of reasoning. And not only did I make my living doing model-based reasoning, I think it's probably one of the most important. You got analogies and metaphors and similes and all kinds of examples of model-based reasoning. And it turns out that not very many people are very, very good at model-based reasoning, which is why one person can make a very good living if you're any good at it, because there's just not enough people who have that faculty, especially if you're having to use mathematics to do model-based reasoning. But because I made my living doing and teaching model-based reasoning, which is essentially the core of science, I was interested in how far back in history can we go to find the pioneers of model-based reasoning. And I kept going back through all the annals of science, back to Galileo and before. And I said, Archimedes, who's the first engineer, okay, class. He invented the calculus, except they lost it. They found it again, but they lost it.
He was screwed.
Sorry?
He was screwed. It's
I
a
missed
joke.
that word.
It's a joke.
Oh, okay, I missed it, whatever you said. So, and I also realized that the kind of model-based reasoning that I never really paid much attention to are allegories, parables, fables, fairy tales, and stories in general, myths. These stories are an early version of model-based reasoning. And the visionaries used stories, allegories, parables, fables, fairy tales, myths, creation stories. They use stories as sort of the pioneering introduction of model-based reasoning. And not only is that an observation of mine, but I went back and I said, where does observation come into prominence in the stories themselves? And turns out that bearing accurate witness is one of the oldest ideas that you see in stories. People behold something and then they tell what they beheld. And did they bear accurate witness? And that turned out to be a really powerful idea. Bearing accurate witness of an observation is a very powerful idea. And in fact, it's such a powerful idea that it's embedded in the fundamental theorem of feedback control theory, which is graduate level applied mathematics. And when I was in graduate school at Stanford, taking a really deep course in feedback control theory, and the professor says, now we're going to do the fundamental theorem of feedback control theory. And the first half of it is you have to bear accurate witness. Your observations have to be accurate. If you don't observe the state of the system reliably, then it doesn't matter that you've got a control system because you won't know which way to turn. If you're driving your car and you can't see out the window, it doesn't matter that you got your hands on the wheel and foot on the pedals and everything's working because you have no idea where you are. And so the notion that bearing accurate witness is the fundamental idea, that goes all the way back to 3,500 years ago. And it blew me away to realize that people were doing model-based reasoning 3,500 years ago. They were called theologians. Remember, theory, I behold. Now you can go out and this is interesting. You go out in the world and you say, I just saw a bolt of lightning. And somebody else says a little bit later, I just heard a crack of thunder. It was, 15 seconds later. And nobody told me that thunder is the sound of a bolt of lightning. I actually had to discover that for myself. It was never in school. And it turns out that in the stories, there's a storybook character who's responsible for thunder and lightning. And Colin, his name is Zeus. And Zeus is a cognate of theos. Theos and Zeus are the same word. Thunder and lightning were said to come from the same power. And the name of the power that was responsible for thunder and lightning is Zeus or Theos.
Yeah,
it's
etymology. Yeah.
Yeah, it's etymology.
And etymology is very interesting, but as Sam has pointed out as well, it's not necessarily to be accepted as the authority as language changes. And it's interesting to see how these things come together. In fact, I think in this space, we have to be very careful about authority because it's what keeps us from potentially doing things more in the barn raising
Which-
way.
Which is why if I behold a bolt of lightning and then I hear a crack of thunder and I say, I beheld the crack of thunder followed the bolt of lightning, please come and confirm that every time you see a bolt of lightning, you then a little bit later hear a crack of thunder. Let us together behold and confirm this theory.
Yeah, no, that's all good. And I don't think any of that goes away.
It
It's
doesn't.
just in modern times, we have a different way of dealing with what we would like to call facts. And that causes a lot of consternation, defining terms and stuff. I think we should go farther with our terms and gently proceed. I envisioned a game where it goes and picks out of the Google Doc, it picks the terms and contacts the people who have different. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Zeus wants to say something. Zeus is the name of that dog.
This is Gaia, not Zeus. This is Gaia is Zeus's daughter. Okay. But anyway, I'd like to take this a little bit off the rails, if I may, okay? Because if I could venture a hypothesis, okay, venture a theory, perhaps, it is true, in my opinion, okay, I will hold as true for me, and if you like to use that formulation, that yes, the early theologians were attempting to understand the cosmos and nature and why things happen the way they do. It was seeking explanation. Along the way,
Yes.
they created theism, which is gods as the cause and source of these phenomena. And so that, I think, was, in a way, a little, side trip they took along the way. Now, where that got derailed is these gods then became morality sources, authority sources, and the quest to explain nature didn't continue when it became a way to exert power. Now, the theologians who continue to explore the universe and listen to quote unquote God that way ended up being precursors of scientists.
Yes.
Scientists today are, the latest in the lineage of early theologians way back 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. Okay. But there's this very large side river, okay, into theology where the search for truth is no longer as important. And I think it's important to recognize that. So I don't disagree with your story of, your origin story, but I do think that it's important to bring this distinction to recognition. So if there are theologians still interested in truth, yeah, I would call them scientists.
Yep.
But not all theologians
And
are.
Yeah, it's interesting because the deities all have names, like Zeus, for example, who's named after the word for to behold. I grew up in a religion in which the name of the deity is very hard to render in English because it's an acronym that's based on the verb to be, past, present, and future tense, all telescoped together. And it's poor William Tyndale had no idea how to translate this very curious grammatical construction, which you cannot translate properly in English. It almost sounds like que sera, sera, what will be. But if you really try to figure out what is the name of the deity of the religion I grew up in English, the name of the deity is becoming. And I think that becoming, as in terms of a cultural value, is among the highest, if not the highest value in the culture I grew up in. Becoming. And so I revere and am inspired by becoming, but becoming is not a storybook character. It's an abstraction. And that's what we think is really important. The process of becoming, the phenomena of becoming, and the spirit of becoming that drives you to want to become, that's a high value. And do you want to call that a religion? Well, you can if you want. It's really a theology. It's it's the concept of what are we all about? I think both Stacy and Sam had their hand up there.
Stace, go.
Thank you. I'll never remember otherwise. I just want to go back to, well, so what Sam said about power, I think is really critical. And it actually ties into becoming, because there have been power dynamics where certain people don't want other people to become. Again, I'm talking like a male, female, or an upper class, lower class. Have any of you watched this? It's a Netflix thing. I just started watching. It's pretty old. It's called, wait, Halt and Catch Fire.
I just saw the title, but I haven't watched it.
Well, I started watching it because it's about the computer industry, and I figured maybe I'd pick up some things to help me when I'm in these groups.
No.
Yeah, it's a joke in assembly language.
But and it's based on a true story, but what I found most interesting is that there's this one female coder, and she is really the brilliant one, and she is really the visionary, and she is the one who sort of like pushed aside. And
Ada?
again, this really goes to perspectives and bearing accurate witness, because it's so important to have all of those perspectives of a more equivalent nature. So she was like, for example, she recognized that emotional connection between a device and a person, which now we see with like Alexa, or, you know, ways that computers have become more like a friend, so to speak. But her viewpoint wasn't taken as valid because she was in the minority. And I don't even know what I'm trying to say, other than I think we should spend more time focusing on the power dynamics, including in our own small circles. And with that, I'm complete.
Yeah, even back in the 1960s, Halt and Catch Fire was a joke about assembly language instructions. And so HCF, Halt and Catch Fire, was sort of the most famous joke of a made up assembly language instruction.
Well, I guess my concern, and what's really important to me, is if there's such an imbalance of perspectives in people that are doing the coding, to me, that's very dangerous.
Asymmetry. Remember, I got really angry about asymmetry about, was it 6 weeks ago, was it now? I think it was Glenn asked me what I was going on about, and I said asymmetry. And I said it at volume level 12, by the way.
I'm curious to know, Sam's like eyes popped open for a minute. What struck you?
I'm actually forgetting what I wanted to hold my hand up for.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. My short
But
time.
after that,
You said you had an hypothesis or a theory. Did you finish explaining your hypothesis or theory?
I got too involved in dog petting.
Yeah.
And then Stacy reified becoming.
Oh, yes, it was the becoming end notion. Thank you, Barry. Okay, so I have heard in this particular session on Sundays in GCC, whole notion about being 100% present, that all we have is the present, which to me
that's Doug.
doesn't allow for becoming. Becoming is a notion of, it's a notion of evolution. It's a notion of change. It's a notion of a direction, which doesn't happen if you've only got one data point.
Right.
There's only is. There's no becoming if you've only got one notion, one present moment.
You need time derivative. You need
exactly.
You need,
exactly
dx.
Exactly.
I mean,
DT,
yeah, D state DT, yes.
as opposed to deity.
D
Okay, it's DT, not deity. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, DT, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a geek joke.
Leibniz and Newton, DT.
So I just wanted to bring up that little observation that the whole notion of becoming is almost antithetical to the way this be 100% present insists that I not think about past and insists that I not think about the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to notice that little disconnect. Over.
Yeah, I was very surprised how many people who even are students of theology will not go back to that famous story. This is the so-called Bernie Bush story, where a very adolescent Moses is saying, what am I supposed to do with my life? I've got this people out here that I'm related to that are enslaved. I'm in the lap of luxury because I got picked up by the Pharaoh's daughter and I grew up in the Pharaoh's court and I'm happy as a clam, but don't I have a mission in life? He says, what am I supposed to be doing? And he hears the voice of his deity, says, you're going to go save your people. Your people are in dire straits. They're your kin. You got to save them. Moses says, who the hell am I going to tell them sent me? They're going to say, who sent you? Who the hell are you? We don't even know you. And the answer comes back to Moses, and it's in Hebrew, of course. Aheya asher aheya, will be what will be. This is the name of the spirit that sends Moses to go down and save his people. Aheya asher aheya, will be what will be. Ke sarah sarah. Well, it doesn't even have a subject. It's just a verb, future tense of the verb to be. Then the relative pronoun, who, which, or that, because asher is a relative pronoun that can be who, which, or that. It's not specific. Will be, who, what, will, which will be. Translated, it's past tense, present tense, and future tense, which in English is really in the gerund, becoming. Tell them becoming has sent you. This is your guiding light. The process, phenomenon, and spirit of becoming. And it's hard. I mean, how can you not believe in becoming? It would be unbecoming not to believe in becoming. But it's not a deity. It's an abstraction. It's a process. It's a process of an individual. It's the process of a community. It's the process of human civilization. It's the process of evolution. You know, it's not really a religion. It's just an abstract concept of pay attention to the phenomenon of becoming. Go ahead, Stacey.
I was just going to say the saddest part of what you just said to me is that the idea that Moses would have to say, well, who should I say sent me? As if he weren't enough. You know, it sort of reminded me of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Like you needed the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And that is unfortunately how I see the world. I mean, you know, you hear people say, you know, in religious circles, you would hear if Christ showed up, you wouldn't believe him anyway. You'd crucify him again.
Yeah.
Not to trigger anybody. But yeah, there's something in there of not feeling enough to become without permission to become.
Yeah, you need authority just to get people to stop and listen. But here's what's interesting, Stacey. The name Joshua, we have a Josh in GCC. The name Joshua means rescuer or savior. And in the New Testament, the central character is named Yehoshua, Y-E apostrophe, and then Joshua. And the Y-E apostrophe is a reference to becoming. It's a reference to Yod He Vav He. So the name of the character, who's the central character of the New Testament, his name, if you expand it, the process of becoming will save you from going down the tubes.
Well, Sam has his hand up, but I'm just going to say, where are the women in all these stories?
Mary the mother and Mary Magdalene are the two women.
No, you killed them all. You killed them all.
You took away their
killed
stories.
all the witches.
Their stories were put in the back room.
Away their stories.
Yes, that's right.
I didn't take them away. I know about them.
No, the
Not
Zulu
you
conclave way back in the
personally.
1600s. Okay. Anyway, look, I wanted to reference what Stacy just said about. Gotta keep doing this. I must not be getting enough sleep. My mind's not working anymore.
Well, you're preoccupied because of the house.
Your chi is
Well, I mean,
dogified.
The point I was making is the names of these characters are really important because they're storybook characters, but it's not about the character, it's about the meaning of their name. The meaning of the name, like Joshua, literally means rescuer or savior. And Yehoshua, which is in English is written as Jesus, means the process of becoming is your salvation. That's what's going to keep you from going extinct.
Sam?
I was going to ask Stace, could you just quickly recap in 10 or words or whatever, so I could maybe remember what it was I wanted to say back to you?
Oh, I was just talking about, well, first I started with Moses, that he needed to be able to say that somebody else sent him. I talked about the man behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. I talked about needing permission to become. And power, women, lack of women's voices. I don't know. I don't know which part.
Yeah, sorry, it's not coming back to me. I apologize.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want to just say one more thing. And again, this is coming from a woman's point of view, but it could be, you know, it's not just to women. Sometimes people have difficulty with somebody else becoming in a way that's no longer going to suit their agenda.
Yeah, I don't want you to become free. I want you to remain my slave and my servant. Please do
Exactly.
not become free.
Exactly.
Yeah. I listen to Barry's explanations and they're all interesting. And I have no knee reaction because I know he's looking at it like a puzzle, a history puzzle. And there's nothing really to take offense to in that way. It's the people who, like you say, Stacy, who bring an air of authority that, you know, this is the correct story. Like, why don't you believe it?
But Colin, why does it
Or-
have to be the correct? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just please for 1 second.
Sure.
What I'm suggesting is if you could take something and layer it on instead of trying to pull that out of the mix. The story there and take something in, you know, real world application, something that you see is more truthful and factual, and layer it over. Because like you said, there was nothing in that story that was offensive.
No.
So leave it there and build on top of it.
Well, I said it wasn't offensive. I didn't say it was the way I would have went about explaining certain morals or lessons. So
I understand that.
okay, so and that's fine because, you know, whatever. It's when it's always been about the claim and the certainty and arrogance that comes with that. And you're saying religion. Another example I think is the one that I think, if you don't mind me saying, I remember you taking offense in the same tone to feeling that your ideas aren't heard because you don't have an academic background or you don't have a degree.
And by certain people, that was, I stand by that.
Yeah. So, and I always told you that an idea stands alone and you can layer your idea onto other ideas. That's fine. What I'm saying is, what is the framework of the idea or model of the, you know, that you're layering on to? And so I'm saying if we have something that we wanted to release as GCC on the GCC letterhead, would we want to sanitize things that could be triggers to certain people? We want to be more diplomatic. So coming from somebody who has a mixed relationship with diplomacy, because I feel like sometimes diplomacy is required because, you know, there's two examples right now. If I derail the conversation to something that really shows this power over that I'm talking about. In Canada, the Catholic Church and possibly the Canadian government decided that they wanted to teach the Native children better than they can teach themselves. And they knew the right way to teach them. And they had God. And that was back in a time when, you know, atheists were like hen's teeth, right? So that's the way they did it. And up until 1970, in fact. And now I don't know if you guys heard all the news, but there's like a lot of graves that are being discovered now that certain, anyway.
Yeah, we know this.
And it is a prime example, like, you know, of somebody thinking that they are, I assume that most of the Catholics thought they were doing better. Now, did they actually think they had the ear of God telling them that this is better? Or were they just feeling this seems better with all that I grew up in my culture? So it was total culture frame clash. And one culture decided that they had the better. And I've always about, you know, sure, let's talk about it, but please define better. What do you mean by better? Right? And so if we're talking about science, Stacy, you can layer what you want on, but if it won't stick to science if it's woo. It just can't. But if you're talking about the soft sciences and what's consciousness and, what sociology, what is mental illness, what is what is clear conversations, these things are up for experimentation depending on your culture. And I think you really have to simplify, and probably the way Heiner's talking about, to have those conversations. Because if I put myself into those conversations of diplomacy, like, for example, trying to negotiate between the Catholic Church and the natives, I'm going to side with the natives, just right off the bat. What about the Palestinians and the Israelis? Not so easy for me to decide, right? I, personally feel like there's some entitlement from the Israelis that's spilling over into Palestine, causing them grief. But I don't know that. I don't know for sure, but it definitely seems to me that Israel thinks that they're the better, and the Palestinians, again, are the natives being schooled. Like, I don't know. There's so much propaganda and stuff on the internet. I can't take an example like Tom. Tom brought some examples, and we had a hard time, saying that you're just putting too much on the table to dissect. But when it comes to this authority over, it's not just a simple thing of where do I find meaning in myths, like Barry's doing, putting puzzle pieces together. It's when people think that they're actually downloading what's better from the universe and they're going to act on it. And they got no way to say other than testimony. And, I love the creationists when they say, well, just look around you. It's obvious everything's been created. It's like, well, maybe if you want to think that way. It's not obvious to me at all. In fact, it's even more miraculous the way I understand it happened. Much more interesting. But, I think that my experiments and the people I could call on to perform those experiments would pan out, where the people who are trying to layer things on because it feels good are going to fail with science, and they're just going to get caught up in their own little world or larger world when it comes to these softer sciences. And, groups like these can become cults, right? If we wanted it to go that way, pick a fearless leader and, get groupthink going. And I think this is a beautiful space where it's very susceptible to becoming a cult, but we have the law of secularism to keep it from happening. Like, we kind of inoculate ourselves from that, because no one can give power over in this group. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I want to go back to your word authority, because I don't like that word either. But it comes from the word author, which is literally means somebody who writes something down. And from the word author, you can get two words which are very opposite in their connotation. You can get authoritative and you can get authoritarian. And as you probably have discovered, I try to be authoritative, meaning that the information I'm presenting is reliable. I try to be a reliable source, authoritative source that you can go back and confirm the research that I'm relying on is valid. And I try not to be authoritarian, which is to say, it's true because I said it. There's a Latin phrase that they use in the law. You may have heard it. It's called ipsi dixit. Ipsi dixit is where a child or somebody in a court of law says, why this? And the answer is ipsi dixit, because I said so. It's true because you have to do it because I said so. That's ipsi dixit, and it's not a compelling reason. It's authoritarian, but not authoritative. So this is really crucial in trying to be.
Just to interrupt you, that can be valid in some situations like parent-child, right? Like for efficiency.
If you don't know how to think for yourself and you're about to do something that's going to get you killed.
Yeah,
like
yeah. Well, there's
running out
examples, but yeah, mostly that's a bad idea.
Running out in the street, I said this before, my father would yell at my brother and myself if we were about to do something really dumb. And he would raise his voice, not because he's angry, but because he doesn't want us to do something stupid that's going to get us hurt. Okay?
Yeah, and I interrupted you with the Sam comment, like about the two kinds of people, because obviously we're thinking deeper than that. But the risk is that I see, the danger, is that people validate their authority from your authoritative comments. And you, with biblical stories, you smooth the narrative so the more fundamentalists can say, see what Barry said? You know, they're still saying Einstein believed in God, right? So
Of Spinoza.
Yeah.
Which is
Basically, yeah. So how do we?
Spinoza got excommunicated for his version of God. He was considered a blasphemous because his concept of God was so abstract that the Orthodox says that's not the God we believe in.
I think Spinoza's God's my God, if I'm not mistaken.
And Einstein's, yeah, it's basically, if you can go read it, it's very abstract. It's just a bunch of abstract traits. It's like you have a storybook hero who has all the good values and good behaviors. Then you have the storybook villain who's got all the bad traits and the bad behaviors, the unbecoming ones. And what Spinoza says is, what are all the becoming traits that humans are aspiring to? Those are the traits that Spinoza was aspiring, attributing to his deity. It's basically a role model for the best you can possibly be. What's the best you can become? Let's make up a role model for the best you can become, and let's call that our deity, our role model. Now, it's not a storybook character, although, you know, if you read the comics, that's what storybook characters are. They're the heroes and the villains. Why? Because people will listen to stories and they'll pay good money to buy comic books and Netflix to watch stories. And if you say, let's go to grad school and take a course in ethics, and they're going to say, it's going to cost $50,000 and I don't want to do it. Okay.
I guess the thing is does it break the open-minded frame? And I think that's what Glenn's worried about. I think Stacy and other people, like, as soon as that authority comes in, the frame becomes closed more, not so open.
This is the deal with propaganda. When Tucker Carlson goes on Fox News and gives a quote opinion, which is which is a conspiracy theory that he made up out of whole cloth, or somebody made up and gave it to him. I don't want to take he is not a source of reliable information. He's a propagandist. Yeah. And then you say, well, so Tom will say, well, here's a piece of conspiracy theory, prove me wrong, which is the opposite of what you say.
Yeah.
What you say is, here's a claim, you have to prove it. Tom comes up and makes a claim and says, prove me wrong.
Yeah.
So you're complimentary in that regard. And so, if I were to go into a classroom and write the Pythagorean theorem up on the board, and if I were to say to the class, behold the gospel truth Pythagorean theorem, take and believe.
Yeah.
If this was a real math class, they would say, excuse me, professor, suffer us the proof. Walk us through the tedious details.
Exactly.
And that's going to take maybe an hour or longer, probably more than one time. And that's just the Pythagorean theorem.
And then it's no longer woo and no longer a religion that requires faith.
But there is a time when a person is young enough, and you'll say, if you want to work out the parameters of a right triangle, just use this formula. take my word for it's going to work. And eventually that youngster is going to say, why is that formula working? Why does it work? And by the way, if you try to do a triangle on the surface of the globe, it doesn't work. It only works on a flat surface. And one of the things that's fun to do is work out the generalization of the Pythagorean theorem for a triangle on the surface of a globe, because then you get celestial navigation. You can become the navigators of the world since it was flat. But
Well, that gives me a segue. I got a segue from that. If you guys don't mind me doing a screen share here. You around, Sam?
Sam turned his camera off, so I don't know where he is. Oh, he said he
Well,
went
we're in
to
the after show. I've made a mistake before of assuming that it's okay just to ask and run into it. So I'm going to ask and wait for the replies this time, because last time I tried this a couple of years ago, it didn't work. So every time I go to do a demo in the after show, even though I trust you two people are not going to derail me in that particular way.
Share screen is turned on. He did enable it.
Yeah. So I'm going to share and make sure I got the right screen here. You guys can see that now.
Not yet. Not so.
This is the next version of the search tool, where I searched. This is actually Kelvin search. It's okay. This is John Kelvin, because the search I did in GCC, the file ended up being like 32 megabytes big, because these pictures are actually embedded into the web page. But this is a I don't know if you guys can see this. This is a word cloud of a particular show, which is Forgot Your MacBook Charger Easy Solutions. I don't know why that particular video is in there. Then here's GCC Zoom 4 and GCC Zoom 1. And so I did a search for, well, let's go up here.
Not GCC,
Sorry.
not GCC.
No, this isn't GCC. That's right. This is John Kelvin. Why don't I go to GCC?
I was going to ask you, by the way, have you made that public yet?
Not yet. No, it's still under development. I did one for Hold Me Back today, and it ended up being Sam, not Stacy. Because part of navigation is what I'm going for here. Here's absolutely. I searched for the word absolutely, and it's 38 megabytes big. And the message isn't here because it was still a bug, but basically it would tell you how many files and were searched and whatever. If we go back, anyway, it doesn't matter.
No,
so here
Paul,
they are.
Can I just say something? That's really interesting. It would be interesting to use that word absolutely in different groups and see proportionately how much absolutely comes in, because I think there's a lot of information in that.
Well, what I find is that this is just the top layer of the navigation. Like, wouldn't it be nice to click a word and say search from here, right? And keep drilling down into weird stuff. You find a phrase that somebody says, oh, I'm going to search for that, and I'm going to label it Stacy, and click the option here to tag videos. So not only while you're searching, you're actually curating. But anyway,
absolutely might say a lot about collective personality of a group.
Well,
and it might not.
Actually, I should run this through again. I'm gonna go back to the John Kelvin one or run it again.
You really need to make it public, because at this point, none of us can use it.
I know, isn't it a pain?
Well, it's sort of disappointing, because there were lots of things I would have loved to go back and search for, but there's no way that I can feed them to you. It would take all your time.
Yeah, well, I do accept some, some requests. I think we can do that through Zulip, through an inbox. I don't mind doing it on the side.
No, but what he's saying is that he would like to be able to play with it on his own.
No, I agree.
I would want to do research, and to do a piece of research and then say, oh, that gives me an idea. Then I got to go back to you and ask them forever.
Right.
But it's not practical. I mean, once, yes, but if I wanted to do an unplanned sequence of, say, 20, that's not realistic.
Okay, well, let's see here. Can I move this thing? Yeah, good. It's in my way. So I'll do another search. It takes a few minutes. What do you want me to search for? Just for example, because this is all up to date to the last I updated the videos.
There was a video which I don't know if Sam ever published it. It was one of the October videos where you thought I was present and I thought I wasn't present.
Yeah, I searched for that. You were not present.
Oh, that's interesting. I was surprised you hadn't confirmed that.
No, I think I had, but the point is that the event that happened still happened and we don't know when it was.
Oh, no, I know
We still-
exactly what happened. It was in the PM. You initiated a PM to me on October 17th and then returned about a week later. And it was in the week later PM, which was the very night of one of those two videos, either Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
You came back to that PM, and that's where I said to you what you remembered. Not in the
deal
video.
is,
It was in the
the deal
PM.
is right here, right now. I'm trying to go forward. So I agree with that line of questioning. That's all good too. But how about a word out of the presentations that you gave, or something that you want to see if actually stuck, something you want to see if as here in the group from something that you offered, something of Barry. Something positive.
Well, off the top of my head, I don't have one that I'm waiting with bated
How about
breath.
effective learning?
What that would be with, by the way, if I say affective computing with an A, I don't know that the transcript would get it as affective or effective. Probably the transcript would write effective. That is a closed captions, I'm saying.
Let's
Colin, he would have used the word cognition, maybe.
okay.
Yeah, I say cognition, affect, and learning. Affect with an A, not with an E.
Okay.
And I know that I explained it to, is Kayla still here? Or did she drop off?
No.
Kayla brought up her own children having emotional issues in school. And I did about a 20-minute quick and dirty on cognition, affect, and learning, just for Kayla's benefit. And that's October 17th. You don't have to look it up. It's October 17th. And that was the time that you came to me in PM and said, I'm interested in this. Give me the link to the source, which I did. And then when you came back a week later, I incorrectly imagined that you wanted to follow up on that.
Yes. Well, I did put in my first comment today that I think there was misalignment, and that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I thought your intent was to dive deeper into the topic that you had asked me about the week before. And so I was diving deeper into it. Turned out that's not what you wanted. Your intent was something other than what I imagined.
Okay, here's a pop quiz. Did I clearly indicate to you yet what it was I was looking for?
Not until I think the next night. And
You
I'm not
might not remember it though, but that's fine. As long as you can remember that it happened.
All I remember is that I was trying to get, back in on the same page with you. And every time I asked you a question, you didn't answer it.
Well, I think we were already down a trail that I had said pause on and trying to go back to another trail. Like if we could have diagrammed it, there probably would have been 3 or 4 trails, and I might have paused a couple of them, and you might have been able to inquire, why is this trail paused?
I was just perplexed because I imagined incorrectly that you were wanted to dive into the rest of that talk. And I was diving into what the part of it that I thought was going to be spot on to your interest, and I was completely off the map.
I totally believe in your intention. That I believe in.
Yeah.
I have faith
But
in your intention.
I couldn't figure out at the time, well, if he's not interested in what he told me he was interested in, what's he interested in? I couldn't figure it out.
I was interested in collaboration and us kind of looking to see if there was any handlebars on what we've done without getting into the severe details.
Yeah. See, I was sharing with you what I'm authoritative on, because that's my research. So I was going to give you authoritative content that I imagined you would find interesting, and I was wrong.
No, I think wrong's a little harsh.
Well, I was not aligned, to use your word, with what you're interested in.
You're just too detailed and not listening to my need or helping me
what your need was.
explain my need.
I didn't get your emotions, I didn't get your needs, and I didn't get your requests, which is not uncommon for me.
Well, I can give you an example concretely. In the emotional realm of learning, there are things to be noticed that could aid somebody on a learning journey. So if I showed you a map of a learning journey, you could go, oh, that's where I would stick this, or are you sure you want that there? And I never even really got to display what I was doing because I guess I indicated wrongly that I wanted the second part of the lecture, which I kind of did as well. So I was kind of open to anything, but I think your experience of communicating allowed you to choose a hammer and saw that was ahead of the contract for me. That's all.
I was using a Socratic method, which I thought you were interested in, but it
Well,
turned out that it didn't work.
It
just
wasn't the
didn't work.
method, it was the topic. Like,
Well,
you could use the Socratic method all over my map all you wanted.
however, I learned something from you that blew me away. What I learned from you is something that I had never encountered before, because I've used the Socratic method a lot in tutoring and helping people, get through their subject matter. And I had never encountered anybody derail the Socratic method as effectively as you did. And I wrote an observation that I got from you, that the Maieutic method of Socrates can be masterfully defeated by the method of tergiversation. That was an insight. I would never have guessed that, except that I learned that from you.
Damn.
What are we
Look
looking
at
at?
that.
I don't know what it's too small to make out, except for the picture.
No, I made a mistake. Why is this not working now? Okay. I forgot to put the W option on here, because the W option on search trans brings in the word clouds, and the word clouds trigger the new formatting. So we'll have to wait till we get our however many results there were, 56 or something.
Oh, so the woman is just the background.
Yeah, she's
not part of the story.
She's a demon. No, that's just the tool running.
But you didn't believe in deities and demons.
Oh, I think fantasy's great. It's just I'm not going to use it as an authority.
Yeah, but you might make her a mouthpiece in a story. You have to have a presenter of a story, and so you create storybook characters to articulate.
And I think what I'm saying is not Barry's stories. I'm saying GCC stories. So I have no right to tell you. I just watched a thing that was very interesting. You probably saw it as well. Frank Zappa on Crossfire back in the 80s. He was getting lambasted because of language that was coming out in some of the rock albums and things like this.
Oh, the hard ass language. Yeah.
Well, it's just he just kept saying they're just words. Why would you ban words? Like,
well, the FCC banned the famous ones. What was the seven famous words you can't say on American radio and television?
Those are the ones. Yeah. The F word alone has, dozens of connotations of context, right?
It's very interesting because I was watching on, I think it was on Peacock or Netflix, The Queen's Gambit, which is a short series. And they use some words, and children are using these words in the orphanage, which just knocked my socks off, because I didn't think you could even use those words at all on, NBC or whatever that series was on. And in fact, the girl who was using the word didn't know what it meant.
So I've taken a long time over this, but yeah, see, so now I've also thought of some optimizations for this too. If it was running on a server and you were going to go on a little bit of a trail, then, you could have a lot of the stuff cached. And then of course, the next thing is how do you make it individualized, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, these are all just pieces coming together. So where's my latest search?
Well, I'm waiting with bated breath for it to become a publicly accessible tool.
Okay, here we go.
Assuming that I'm
Transcript search tool should be version 1 almost, but 09 is good for a while. 58 times and 44 files of nearly 600 files searched.
So does it show the dates on each of those?
It's going to show 44 entries and 58 matches.
In those, in underneath each one, are there dates in there? I can't really see. It's so small.
Yeah. So each one. This is supposed to. Whoa, come back here.
One of them is.
I see what's happening.
That's June. That's just last month.
Okay, right there. I was trying to select. This is actually a button. You can't see it yet because it's not styled correctly.
Yeah.
But this button should open and collapse this, because there could be, a lot of matches, right?
Yeah. That's just last month. That's just last week.
And if there's a ref, that N shouldn't be there. That's another bug. This will take you to the Google Doc. So
Yeah.
you can click on this. Oh, sorry, one of these searches like and condict. Is there a certain show that you're trying to target? When was
Stacy asked, what's the first time I used it? Because those are just last month. And also last March?
I think it's in chronological, so we'll have to go to the bottom here.
Yeah.
So 17.
Because I did a whole show. Sam reminded me, I'd forgotten. I did a whole
05. I think you
episode.
came.
I did a whole episode on them.
And
I think
you
in
can see these
March.
word clouds too, right? Think no way.
Oh yeah, I was
No,
going to say
actually-
something about that because you weren't there yesterday, but Jazz Winter showed up again. He came back from his hiatus and he brought up the word think. And his assertion was that people use this word think, but no, he's not sure anybody actually is doing what the word thinking refers to. And I thought, well, I'm going to go back to a very famous article about thinking called As We May Think by Vannevar Bush, 1945. And I didn't get very far into it where it was clear that people didn't want to spend any time understanding what the word think meant to Vannevar Bush when I was 6 months old.
Well, 0. Whoa, that's a good one. Rule 0. Oh my God, that's going to be me. I'm not going in there. This is like whitewater rafting, eh? So let's go. Let's just pick one of these search terms, okay? And that just brings up the video right at the spot where it is.
You know, there's Jazz.
Oh, look at Eric. I've never seen his thing there.
So this is before my time and look at Stacy's hair. Stacy, you look older in that video.
I have no idea where I am. I'm like
This is
looking
May.
at, oh, that's not this May. That's a long time ago.
The date on that is 2020-0509, May of 2020.
And then also
Right,
there's the
right.
ref here too.
Can you
So you
get
can-
that off?
Yeah. There's also the ref. I don't know why it's not opening. Oh, I think because again, it's the effect of this styling I'm trying to do. So yeah, you guys are seeing something that's, quite fresh paint on this. But as you can see, it's going to be responsive, right? If you pull it out, and if it was like on a cell phone or something, it goes down to like 1. So it's kind of the thing I could right now do a search and send it to somebody, and it's all self-contained. So that's kind of what I'm after, to keep it easy for now as I'm building the pieces, try to keep it useful. So I still have results even though it doesn't have a proper user interface at this point. So that's basically that. For anybody who wants to refer to that piece, and I could also put a bookmark in here for searching. GCC bookmark knowledge trail tool, something like that. And I'll be able to search through in the future these shows and see where I might have showed the knowledge trail tool. I don't have a list of keywords at the moment, but it's something that we can think about doing to try to harvest out of our time if it's something we want to do. Anyway, oh, Barry, you're just back in time to miss the end.
Yeah, at my age, I can't hold.
No. What I was saying was, this. I think I took the share off, didn't I? Yeah. So it's basically getting into a better stage where I like the idea that the word clouds are there,
I
and
like word clouds.
it's self-contained. So it's one file. I still have to write some JavaScript to make the accordion, the collapsing of the search terms. Like,
I know what you mean.
what this should come up as is just a word cloud, the title, and a box for open results. You click the open results, and then it'll expand all the searches that are found for that one video. So you can just, so you don't have to have all the text on the screen until you actually want to drill down in. You know, an
So
accordion. They call it
Will,
accordion.
will each recording have its own word cloud?
Yeah, I'll show you that.
So if I just throw out a date, you can give me a word cloud for that date?
Yes, I can. It's better if you, it's better if you send me the video ID. Everything's tagged by video ID because it's unique.
I finally
So if you're looking at YouTube, just look at the ID.
remembered the topic you did want to bring up the week after October 17th. You wanted me to look at a debate between Sam Harris and Deepak Chopra.
Oh yeah.
And I was not clear on why you wanted me to look at the debate, but I did look at it and I started to analyze it. But I think my analysis was too tedious and too detailed and too slow for what you were actually I didn't know what you actually wanted me to do other
Right.
than just look at it.
Actually, yeah, that's interesting that you can't remember because I was trying hard to explain why. But I think the deal is that I guess now with hindsight, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking that you collect the puzzle pieces before you start building the frame. So you were doing your collecting, make sure you had an adequate enough pieces to start to think about it.
Yeah, I was
Where-
watching it one sentence at a time and trying to parse each sentence from the beginning. And I was taking me like about 5 minutes to parse one sentence,
Right.
which is
Well,
which
that is a bit
accurate,
taxing, but
which is typical for me.
no, that's fine. I don't have a problem with how academic or analytic or how rigorous you want to test something. That's fine. It's making sure you have the right question or the right hypothesis. And so I think the hypothesis that I presented was, I guess, not something you wanted to frame the question with. So how I was trying to frame the question was a non-question to you, or you needed to collect more pieces before my question was a valid question.
I don't remember the
And
question.
I thought it was pretty simple.
I mean, the only question that, not even a question, in hindsight, maybe what you wanted me to do is confirm that what Deepak was talking about was woo and what Sam was talking about was science. Maybe
Close. Close. What I wanted was for you to think of what the audience was getting out of it.
that I couldn't.
That's what my
possibly
question
do.
was.
Couldn't possibly.
Yeah, well, I know, and it really it's a bit of a rhetorical question, and depending on who's there, like I've seen debates where depending on who holds the debate, like if it's at a church, there's gonna be a lot of
Some
church
guy
people.
named Sam was also the debate moderator, but I don't remember his last name.
Yeah, Sam can be a bit offensive, but he's pretty good. I like most things he says. He's a lot like Jordan Peterson in that way. He can be a bit controversial. But I think if you hear him out in the context where you can actually interpret, then it's hard to say he's wrong. Although there are some things that people say, he talks about free will, not having any. He talks about
I was there to figure out
Deepak and its consciousness being complete woo.
I was there to try to understand what they were saying, not whether they're right or wrong. Just can I capture what they're saying?
Well, definitely with your background, you're going to put a lot more stock, from what I understand, in what Deepak is saying than I do. Right off, I'm biased.
But he's hard to understand because he's very abstract.
I guess what it is I've heard other people analyze him who I think are more professional than me, of course. And
you're an electrical engineer like I am. I mean,
yeah. That's what I mean. So the thing is to hear enough fair conversations so that you're informed. So how informed am I? By listening to all these different words that they say, words that they stick with over time. Some things they may change. Very rarely do they change. But you have to always leave it open to somebody like Stacy was today with you. Have you changed your mind? And I think that's a very healthy way to look at something, to give somebody the opportunity. It's also a way to manipulate the conversation. But if there's trust there, I don't think it's negative. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, but I wasn't there to judge them. I was there to see if I could just simply understand what they were saying.
Well, I kind of understood what he was saying because I've heard that debate many times. It's the one where he goes on the consciousness psychobabble, and Sam calls him on it because he doesn't have any authoritative knowledge in that area. Even though he might have studied science and biology, he hasn't studied it to the level to make the conclusions that he's coming to. And Sam really makes that point strong. And I'm thinking, does the audience buy that? Should I buy that? Right. So right there, that was where we were. And the fact you have your arms in the air is like, yeah, it's messy as hell. So how do we get a bunch of sliders out and get it wrong and then get it a little bit righter and get it a little bit righter? And when is it good enough, if ever?
But that's sort of like I won't say a master's thesis, but it's like a project you might spend a week on to try to analyze that debate between Sam Harris and Deepak Chopra to figure out, what are they saying that you can understand? What are you saying that they disagree? What are you saying that they agree, but they're using very different language to say the same thing? And this is interesting, Colin, because most people would say that science and theology are antagonistic to each other. They're unaligned. But over in Grace Chapel in Lexington, we have a group of professional scientists, and we meet once a month to discuss the interface between science and theology. Because I find that science and theology have been saying the same thing, but in very different language for 3,000 years. But because they're using very different language, one of the languages very well, and the other one you don't know the language at all.
Yeah,
and so
that's interpretation, though, right? That's our terminology page.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. Yes, that's the problem with people use language which is unfamiliar, and you don't know what it means.
Right, and so Deepak and Sam were kind of playing that terminology game for us, and I was just saying, as an audience, are we buying it? And looking at the reaction of the audience.
I've been studying the connection between science and theology for years.
Yeah,
because it goes back to my adolescence.
Yeah, well, I can tell we're both interested.
I studied ethics under Rabbi Kripke, who was a Jewish rabbi, and his son becomes a world-class American philosopher. And I say, well, yeah, Rabbi Kripke is teaching ethics, but it's not really about Judaism or theology. It's about how to reason coherently about ethical behavior.
Yeah,
and yes, you can go to Harvard University and take that same course in graduate school. But I was a teenager in Omaha, but I had an opportunity to take the same course or the same subject from Rabbi Kripke.
So I don't really, like, I was talking with Stacy in the soft sciences, it's hard to say, what is for sure, right? Like, especially when it comes to consciousness, it's like, whoa. But some people say it's limited to what's in the brain. Some people, or, for the most part, or at least within the body's sensory organism, it's controlled by the brain for the most part, as far as we know. But it gets kind of fuzzy quick. So when Sam and Deepak were narrowing in on the crucial part of disagreement, which is what you kind of need to do, right? To tear back the layers as much as you can and identify where you need to agree to disagree, essentially. And it's when Deepak was saying that when you look away from something, it's not there. It's like, it's soup. So Sam says, let's be clear. When you look away from the moon with a flag and an astronaut standing on it, because it happened to be when they landed on it, let's just say, when you look away, all of a sudden they all just disappear and that man's no longer on the moon. I know I'm being dramatic, but
in quantum mechanics, that's true. If you look away, in fact, even when you look at a particle, you see it as it was the instant you looked at it, but the act of looking at it kicks it away. The act of looking.
No, that's a scale. No, that's a scale error. But
the point is that somewhere between looking at one particle and kicking it away and looking at something massive, we're looking at is not going to.
Yeah, that's what I mean. A scale error. Sure, I'll give you weird, spooky stuff happens at the quantum level, but weird stuff happens when you're in a cult too. Like,
Well, it also
depends on,
happens.
but that's a
in
bad conflation.
conversations.
But the point is context matters.
Yeah. In fact, the act of saying something in a conversation like this, the act of saying something and getting it out of your head often leaves you in a different state than before you said it. And after you've said it, you may think that's only half the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are a river. We are a river.
And as soon
in
as
our
you say
lives.
something, you no longer would say that same thing again if you're learning.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not learning, if you're a robot and you say it, you're going to say the same. Alexa's going to say the same thing the next time, because Alexa sort of learns, but not like humans. But also humans get into a state where they stop learning, and they'll say the same thing over and over again, and not say, "Why do I believe that now?"
But wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a tool that while we're having this conversation, we had some guidelines that we set into the conversation. For example, if I make a category error, please, turn my square blue. If I get arrogant, turn my screen pink, and just keep doing these little things so that I have, and everybody in the room has feedback based on what we think happened. It could be wrong, right? But at least it goes a little ways towards. So, and the big one I'm looking for is, tell me when somebody has reframed the conversation, or someone's moved the cheese, as they say, or moved the goalpost, right? Please show me a conversation where the premise is actually clear. It's not clear yet. Okay, well, the premise square is empty, right?
Yeah.
Until we fill that premise square, we aren't really talking about anything, right?
That's why I brought up because I think it was the second night that you said, what I really want you to do in this conversation was to look at this video. So that changed the focus of the conversation, but I still didn't have the premise.
Yeah.
Why do you have to look at this video?
That's important. The premise of the observance was a stepping stone to having an idea of this manipulation that's at play. Are we buying it? Who's manipulating who? Can we frame this conversation? And then we could look and say, well, Deepak's actually got a really good point here, and Sam's got a really good point here. That's kind of like the next level down. And then you were already at the level below that with saying, I want to make sure I know exactly what he's saying. Yeah. So I was up 2 levels of context, thinking,
so we're not aligned. We're operating at different levels of abstraction.
Maybe we look at each other a little bit like this, like some of the things that I think are really important, you think are just kind of obvious, and the things that you think are really important, I'm thinking, well, that's just kind of obvious.
Ask Stacy. I will say something at one level of intellectual abstraction, and if Stacy doesn't stop me, I won't know that I'm talking over her head, or maybe sometimes under her head. But I can easily talk over somebody's head and have no clue.
And I'm not worried about that, because I can always say, I don't understand. Can you explain that again? It's when the question that I'm proposing, the premise is not understood. And I think we hit it right there. If we could keep our eye on the ball, which is called the premise, then we would have been able to figure out the dynamics of teacher student, gather more data, or discuss.
Well, the most important thing you said to me, and I think you said it maybe 2 weeks ago, is, Barry, you're not my teacher, or some words to that effect. And if I had known that on October 17th, I never would have presumed that when you came back, you wanted to learn more about that.
That's not true. That's not true. I just wanted to take it in a way where we both design the course a little bit so that I know what I'm in for. And, it takes time. And I think personality's got in the way, and there's all kinds of things. I really believe I tried to realign, but I think that what I wanted to do really pissed you off in terms of theory of mind.
Oh yeah, theory of mind will send me up the wall so fast.
So I have to learn how to ask those questions in a way that doesn't trigger you, because I know I'm in trouble.
Marshall Rosenberg says, don't assert to somebody else their thought or their feelings or emotions or
the diagnosis. Don't
turn
diagnose.
Around and say, do you feel this way, or do you think this way? So that it's a question as opposed to an assertion, because that's a huge difference.
Yeah. Do you think the audience was believing what Sam was saying, or do you think the audience was believing what Deepak was saying? So it was like a third person kind of theory of mind question about just that.
I wasn't even trying
So-
to figure out, I was just trying to see if I could understand what they were saying.
That I had you on because maybe you hadn't dived into this material before. And, I've seen this stuff quite a few times. I've seen Deepak many a time get put on the hot seat and watch him squirm with quantum, this, quantum, that.
Quantum's overused.
And the moon disappears and becomes quantum soup. It's like Sam just said, well, right there, I don't know what he said, but right there, like, how do you
But
respond
what
to that?
happens
Like,
is your observations become stale over time. The question is, how stale?
that's
do they
fine, but the
become?
moon is going to be there
How
tomorrow.
stale do they
And whether-
become
look at it or
over how
not.
much time?
I believe the moon is there.
Oh, yeah. I
Deepak's
mean,
saying the moon is only there because we think it's
But
there.
if the moon
Colin-
vanished, we would know about it in about 2.5 seconds.
But Colin, even in that case, it's about context. Because, I mean, I
It
didn't
is.
see the lecture, but for a human being, the truth is, if something's not there, it doesn't affect them. It's like, goes to the expression, what they don't know won't hurt them. I don't know in what context he was speaking,
That's
but
true.
it's possible.
He
I
was
mean,
talking literally. He was talking literally because Sam
was
held
this-
him to it.
A video debate on YouTube, recorded debate.
I understand, but I heard one of you say a few minutes ago that sometimes when people speak, they speak out half of something. And if they had the ability to go back, they might say, oh, well, I don't necessarily agree because there's that other half of the meaning that I would bring
Right.
into it.
Right. Steel
And-
manning.
No, not steel manning.
Well, understanding what the other person's trying to say. As
No,
if they,
that's not what I'm talking about.
okay, how is
I'm
it different?
I'm talking about, in some contexts, I might have a certain opinion. That opinion changes in a different context. The
That's
basics
fine.
of what I used to make my decision didn't change, but the formula was different because the needs of a situation might have changed. The relevance of a situation might have changed.
Sure. Yeah. I get you. And that's why Sam was holding his feet to the fire to get him down to the concrete statement of claim. And Sam put the words in his mouth. Are you telling me that you are claiming that X is so? And
And just
Deepak
for
says, yes,
clarity, we're
it's just
talking about
quantum soup.
Sampo.
You know why I'm laughing, Colin?
Go ahead.
Is you use the word concrete.
Yeah.
As the basis for something as abstract. You have something like 6 levels of abstraction, from the most concrete to the most abstract. So here they're talking about the most abstract thing in human conversation, in human culture. And you're saying, I want it to be concrete. Well,
Yeah,
by
the concrete
definition,
statement. Yeah, it's not easy. That's the whole point. That's why
it's
Sam is so
impossible.
good at it.
It is oxymoronic to say,
Well,
I want
hold
you
on.
to take the most abstract thing and make it concrete.
Do you not
It's
agree?
oxymoronic.
Do you not agree that stating that the physical molecules of the moon disappear when you're not looking at it?
Did he say that?
Yes.
I don't.
Harry
well,
says no, you say yes. I'd have to watch for
I say
myself.
no. I say there's no way. The way that Sam held, and that wasn't even the part of the video that we were talking about,
I don't think
actually. but
I don't think we got to that.
it's
We only
all-
got
all
like
to
the
do.
first 4 sentences.
Yeah.
I only got as far as analyzing the first, I think, 4 or 5 sentences, and you were getting impatient, I think is the correct word.
Yeah, well, I like this. I like the level that Stacy's analyzing it, because the next level is the level you're going at. Okay, well, let's see who's right, or what are they actually to be validated on. I was asking with just layman's knowledge of what they've just said, without getting into, the etymology of everything, right? Just the Stacy level, right? Tell me what you, and I'll tell you if I believe it or not. We don't know if Stacy's right or not. Don't know if I'm right. Don't know if Sam's right or not. But if we all did a vote, what would we come up with? And that's the dynamic conversation I'm talking about, because that's the story that steers the mindset regardless of the facts.
You sent me somebody a while back, and I got to look for him. And I think I might have sent it to Barry and asked him if he heard of it. Or maybe
Tom
I sent
Green?
it to somebody else. No, I will look for it after. But I listened to he was an expert. He was
Oh, I know
definitely-
who it was. It was
He has
it was
initials for
PC
his name.
Myers. PC
Oh.
Myers. PC Myers.
That's him.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back, because the only thing I remember is that I would have stopped him after the first 4 sentences.
He's offensive.
But not because he's offensive,
I know,
just
but he is.
because I don't think he was acting in this way we're saying we want to approach things scientifically. I think whatever his first 4 sentences were filled with assumptions.
That could be. And I must tell you that if somebody has authoritative knowledge, they do get frustrated. And, I think people who have studied things quite a bit, they get frustrated. And that's why it'd be nice if you could have like a little map or a trail that you could leave, a knowledge trail that I could give you, not only the PC Meyer one, but where you could go look up the data where he gets his stuff. So instead of saying he's not telling the truth, he's making too many assumptions. Like, for example, when I'm talking to
No,
some,
I just would like to be in a room with him and stop him and just go through those first 4 sentences and then move on from there.
I'll have to have a look because it didn't hit me that way. People do make assumptions, but people like PC Myers, their reputation is built on being able to back it up.
But it's okay. So let me give an example. Barry's an expert in the affect of emotions on cognition. I'm probably getting all the words mixed up because I'm frazzled. And even though, and by the way, I do have a degree, I just don't have a PhD. I just want to clear that up from before. But the thing is, with Barry, I can still say, I'm not so sure you're right on this. Can we look at it? And he'll look at it with me, which is a very important thing when it comes to a teacher or power dynamics.
Totally. There was consent, there was premise, there was a clear ask.
But what I'm saying, I'm saying is I'm not really interested in having anyone as a teacher who can't allow for that space. I don't want to prove what they have to say or disprove it. I don't have time to waste.
You're saying you don't want a teacher who's not open to learning, or a teacher that's not willing to accept your confusion as truth?
More the first than the second.
Because that's what a student has, right? When they're rebelling against the teachers, like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this?
No, that's not, but I'm talking about, I don't have patience for any person that doesn't allow for the possibility that there may be something small they missed.
I think that
almost guaranteed there's something small. It's virtually guaranteed in science.
That's what you're saying, is you don't like arrogant people.
I'm saying that, but more importantly, I'm saying that
that's arrogancy.
Well, there's a lot of people that are arrogant, and then that word is used against people too. I mean, sometimes that word is used against somebody who's not an expert, but might have something to offer, by someone who wants to shut them down because they're the expert.
Well, sometimes people are authoritatively arrogant because they're frustrated and they're tired of trying to explain evolution to creationists. They're done.
Then let me put it another way. I don't want to have to spend too much time with somebody that gets so frustrated.
Right.
Because
that's fair. And so maybe PC Myers isn't the guy for you, but he is an example of somebody. And I can't remember why I sent it to you. I think it was about evolution and woo, but I can't remember because we go through a few, but I definitely wasn't sending it to you to tell you were wrong. I think
I didn't
sent you one about
way.
Peter Green. I think I sent you a Peter Green one because you said Peter Green was a mentor of yours or something.
I don't even.
Was it Peter Green? Is that right?
I don't know who Peter Green is.
I know who PC Myers is. I may have heard the name, but I just don't think I know anything about him.
PC Myers is a biologist, works out of the University of. I don't think he's retired.
My only interest in bringing up his name was because I wanted to say, this is how not to do collaborative conversations. That was my interest.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree, Stacy. And I think it would be nice as we have this conversation tool where we can label the conversation as a lecture, because PC Myers was lecturing. He was in the middle of a lecture. This is what I think, and this is why I think it. And you
but
take
still,
it or leave it.
That's still not the whole picture. I don't have a problem with the lecture.
No, this is a lecture. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could send back to PC Myers where you clicked 5 times where you would like him to, justify himself? And what if you're the 500th person who's done that and that's already been answered?
look,
Well, you said
Again,
you said he was making claim. Did I hear you right that he was coming out making assumptions, which are claims? He
did
made
say
like
something
4
about-
assumptions.
I have to watch it again. It was so long ago.
Yeah, I know.
All
I know what you mean.
I don't think it's important.
No, it's just another one of these conversations that's not collaborative. I agree.
Yeah.
It's knowledge. It's like reading a book.
I think one of the things that he may have done also is to attach two thoughts together. So where one of them I would be able to go with, he added something that really wasn't necessary. That was part of his own opinion, and it's sort of like it's tagged on.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's the thing that I think if Peter, they would advise them to keep that out, right?
Yes.
To be clearly held. Yeah, that's true. That's so, and he is a little rough around the edges. I knew that. And the Žižek, Slavik Žižek. I don't know if you've looked him up yet, Barry. I'm butchering his name.
I don't think I was able to map your pronunciation into a spellable.
Zizek.
Well, if I did find it, I don't think I found anything to read.
You know what would be, I'm sorry. I just had an idea though.
He's really hard to listen to, like PC Myers times 10. He's a philosopher, very opinionated. But man, once you get past his idiosyncrasies, I think he's got a lot of worthwhile things to think about, just as I think Chomsky does.
I like listening to Daniel Dennett. As a
He's
philosopher
good too.
goes, I think Daniel Dennett's worth listening to.
Yeah,
I read
he's
a couple
good.
of his books too.
I'm going to put his and the one that I watched recently was called the Pervert's Guide to Ideology. It's a play off of the Pervert's Guide to Cinema. It's some producer. It's art, right? And it's not pervert as in sexual perversion, right?
If you're using the word pervert out of context, then I don't know what the context is.
Well, I think modern has ruined the etymology of the original word. He was going back a little bit earlier with the etymology of the word pervert. Perverted can be used another way.
Yes, I don't know the etymology of pervert.
That's what it originally meant. I think it could be used another way. He goes through it in the video, but
What
I
does it
put
mean?
Zizek there, and
What does it mean in that other way?
it can be
There's
used for something
perversion.
else.
Maybe the word perversion is because
Adaptive, adaptable.
a misappropriation or an abuse of something that is being used inappropriately from its original context or setting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it had the negative connotation. Just like some other words, communism never had a negative connotation. There's several words that have been, and gays took back theirs, right?
Who?
Like,
What?
Gay, the word gay has been taken back.
Oh, gay as in homosexual.
Yeah, it used to be
yeah,
a
gay 90s
unspeakable word. And now, well, it's acceptable word now.
Oh, as a synonym for homosexual, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you dirty gay. It means he's gay. Like, end of story. He's 5 feet tall. He lives in Bermuda. He's gay. It's like,
Yep.
all just facts. So yeah, Stacy, I totally agree. And that's the kind of the vision I have is ways to have the frame and the context of the conversation that you've just been invited to outlined in a way where you're not just assuming the context, and you're not assuming the person, and it may be maybe some memory associated to it, so that you're not starting from scratch. So you may be able to start a conversation and the guy says to you, well, I've been studying this for years. If you really want the answer to the question, click this node, because I've already explained it many times, but please come back, right? And then that gets automated into a robot. And so you're actually talking to the guy, but you're talking to him servicing people at scale at that point. And when he changes his mind, if he's followed the Engelbertian way, then he can change the source material, which will actually amend the material, maybe not replace it, delete it, like delete is evil, but a way that when you go look, there's amendment saying, this is the old copy. You go look at, research tools on the internet. If people are doing a good job, you go to a site that you're reading the documentation from the old tool. They'll say at the top, this tool's been depreciated. Please click here for the new version. So you don't spend your whole day reading stuff that, is no longer applicable for So I do think aligning with the context is really, really important in a generalized group like this that's not paid to do this agenda.
I think the problem I have is that there are certain people that I would ask advice of one thing for, but that doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah.
that I want their advice on something else, because I don't have the same trust in the reliability.
That goes without saying.
Well, one of the things that would be helpful is if things were broken down into smaller pieces, because then I could take a small piece from someone. That doesn't mean that I have to take everything from them. So like the whole idea of even a broken clock is right twice. Let me take that broken piece.
You called it broken, which is kind of ruined the statement, but I get what you're
It's
saying.
not becoming, it's static. Broken clock is not a becoming. It doesn't.
Take something that may look broken to other people and let you run with, because I don't want to call it broken, because something's broken is really not worth.
Well, if I'm talking about a broken clock, I'm talking about a clock that is just, it's just stuck in place, and it's not
Yeah,
necessarily.
but you don't know when
reflecting-
when it's correct. So you could just say, oh, might be now, might be later.
No, it's kind of.
That's not my point. My point
That's
is
my point.
that there is probably something that we could glean from everyone. And that the trick would be to find that piece of glitter.
Well, I can appreciate that Barry doesn't want to accept me as authoritative on theory of mind. I accept that.
Not about what's in, you have very little clue about what's going on up here.
Well, even to play the game, to ask the questions. But I think from a standpoint, like you're saying, Stacy, realizing that it's kind of broken, it's hard to do, it's very messy is the word I like to use. I'm going to try anyway. And if I try, this is what it's going to look like. So
Yeah.
maybe people can say, well, that's going to be doomed for failure. Well, that's great. But at least
Yeah,
they're
but you
listening to
know
what I'm
what?
saying.
I mean, I would never try to do some mathematical equation that I know I have no aptitude for. And
You
I don't
could
know
find
that-
somebody to do it.
exactly if they, well, that's,
But how do you know that math question needs solving? Because you talk to another guy who says, I'm quite certain, and you trust them, but I don't have time. So, Barry might give you a piece of information. You might take that and goes to somebody else who has more time, or vice versa. You might go to some professor, get some information. Barry's got lots of time. He loves to work on these things. So you come to Barry and he helps you dig into it.
Sam, we have 30 minutes, right?
But how do you know it's the right question? That's the thing. And that goes back to how do you know what's better? And then that goes back to me is that's too simple of a question. How do you know the context isn't leading you astray in the conversation you're in? How do you know you're in a fair conversation? Like, where are the indicators that nobody's screwing you over and taking your calculator and throwing it into the ethers of yesterday? Because that's what Sam said. They screwed that person over with their calculator.
When starts, Sam, at 10 minutes after the hour?
No, I'm just checking to see whether or not I should stop this and start another one, or whether you guys are planning on wrapping up anytime soon.
If we finish in less, what did you say, 25 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I
I'd
think
like
I
to
started
show- I'd
this
like to
about
show
10
you-
after.
Yeah.
Nominally 20 minutes. 'cause
So
it's
it's,
top of the hour.
so in 30 minutes, it'll be 10 after the hour, which is your.
Okay, never mind. I'm going to stop it.